Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was trained by Vasco Strada and became the Guardian of Heaven Part 2. Before we start, please go support Zadilfo for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Chapter 7 Duel of Longus. Issei had arrived at the headquarters in the company of Griselda and Dulo, and apparently Dulo was also a great exorcist. He was the strongest warrior in the church and was the bearer of one of the most powerful Longinos, Zenith Tempestina Longinos, which controls the weather. After a while of walking inside the headquarters, they entered the room where the high command of the church was, including Pontiff Vasco Strada. The room was full of high command. Upon reaching the center, one of the oldest priests spoke, silencing the others. Priest silence. Priest 2 present himself before the apostles of God. Dulo Gesualdo, high-level exorcist and bearer of the Longinos Zenith Tempestina. Griselda 4th high-level exorcist and master of sacred weapons. Issei Hudo, bearer of the sacred sword echelon and bearer of the Longinus booster gear and current Sekiudii. Vasco and high-level exorcist, you forgot to say young Issei. Everyone in the room was stunned by the title that Vasco had just given to Issei, and there were several murmurs at those words. Suddenly the first to speak was Griselda, a little excited. Griselda, how can they give you a title like that without having any merits or memorable action? That's unfair. Vasco, but he has had a merit in seeing you defeated cleanly and also unlocking the balance break at an early age, and with the swordsmanship skills that you taught him, I think it is enough to be a high-level exorcist. Priest 1, seeing that there is distrust in the decision we have made and the same that his own teacher puts on him, which is why we would like to see the power of the Sekiudii. Priest 3, for which you must face Dulo in a battle. Issei, and if I prefer to decline that proposal. Griselda, you won't do it, because if you do, you'll make me look ridiculous because you're my apprentice. That's what I taught you, pulling Issei's ears. Issei, it's okay if I'm going to do it, just let me go. Griselda, upon releasing Issei, rubbed his ear, and she got more angry at Issei's attitude, while Dulo laughed at how Griselda treated Issei. Upon leaving the room, Dulo went to prepare for the duel, while Issei followed Griselda to a special room. Upon reaching an isolated area of the headquarters, they came to a hallway where there were small rooms where as they passed they saw several more exorcists, and upon reaching one in common, Griselda took out a key and opened the door of one of them, and upon entering he only saw a bookcase with several books, a desk, several pieces of furniture such as wardrobes and safe deposit boxes, and in one of those boxes Griselda taking out a suit that she gave to Issei. Griselda, put it on. If you're going to be an exorcist, you should at least look a little like us. Issei, and who is this from? Griselda was Zenovia's father. He was a great exorcist. He was known as the Red Swordsman for being one of the bloodiest of all the exorcists. He sat in his desk chair and started thinking about the old times, but after a while he saw Issei already dressed in the clothes he had given him. Issei, well, it's not bad, the clothes are very comfortable. Griselda is made so that you can fight and is made so that in any climate it can acclimatize, among many other things. But let's get to the important thing. You are going to face Dulo. He is the most powerful of the exorcists with great skill in his Longinos, which is why your fighting style is a bit the same as his. So I will only give you one piece of advice: do not let him use his Longinos because it will destroy you. Issei, I wouldn't be in this mess if someone hadn't said something in front of the higher-ups. Griselda, don't look at it from the bad side, better be aware that they will test you to see your abilities and that you are capable of carrying that title. Issei just got a little upset. Suddenly Griselda got up and walked to the door. Griselda, let's go. It's time for your battle. Issei and Griselda walked through the Vatican facilities until they reached an arena inside a large building. Upon reaching the battlefield, in the stands there were several priests, nuns, exorcists, and apprentices to be exorcists. Suddenly, from the opposite side of the field, Dulo came out. Dulo, I think it's time for you to show me your strength, Sekiudii. Dulo got into a fighting stance, and so did Issei while Griselda left the battlefield. The moment she left the battlefield, Issei and Dulo ran towards each other, and when they were in front of Issei, Dulo sent a kick to Issei's stomach, but Issei grabbed him by the foot and tried to throw him into the air and make him lose his balance, but Dulo with his other foot jumped and kicked Issei's face, making him fall to the ground, but Issei rolled and moved away from Dulo. Issei stood up and wiped the blood that came out of his lip. Issei, you are so strong, Dulo. The title of the strongest exorcist is no joke. Dulo, come on Issei, show me what you're capable of. At that moment Dulo created an ice sword in his hand and ran towards Issei, but Issei summoned step and was able to cover himself from Dulo's attack, and a sword fight began with attacks and blocks from Issei and Dulo, but neither gave in until Issei summoned his booster gear and several increases sounded and Issei transferred them to his sword. That made it have a more destructive aura and broke Dulo's sword, that shattered, but when the ice fragments fell they moved and attacked Issei, creating several scratches on his body. And that also made him back off, but when Issei looked at Dulo, several ice spears were created around him, and were launched towards him. But with his sword he created a sling of sacred power that when colliding a curtain of ice residue was created when it cleared, and Issei was injured from several fragments that had passed. Dulo saw him with a face of satisfaction at Issei, who suddenly his sword disappeared and a red aura began to emanate. Seeing that, Dulo quickly raised his hands to the sky and storm clouds began to form and thunder. Issei began to glow a crimson red and a red armor appeared on his body, and a voice came out of the balance break scale and made glove, and a roar from the armor came out, scaring the spectators. But Dulo did not even flinch. Lightning bolts began to fall on Issei, but he dodged them with his thrusters, but little by little with his speed he approached Dulo when he was in front of him. Dulo received him with a punch charged with a wind that spun in his fist. When he hit Issei he was blown away and a tornado was created, leaving Issei trapped in it. When the tornado ended, Issei fell to the ground, but when he wanted to stop, Dulo kicked him, that sent him flying and crashing into a wall. Issei got up quickly and created several spheres of power and threw them at Dulo. He could only dodge them, but when he saw that the last one was going to hit him full on, he stretched out his hand and froze the sphere, but Issei, who had taken advantage of the distraction, hit the frozen sphere, destroying it, and in the process hitting Dulo, who flew out and crashed into a wall. When he got up, Dulo was very hurt, but at that moment Issei threw them at him another sphere of power where Dulo was. When he saw himself trapped, Dulo began to emanate a sacred aura from his body, and in a moment the sphere of power froze everything around him, even Issei himself in his armor. Dulo saw that Issei had stopped because he was frozen. Dulo approached Issei. Dulo, you surrender. Issei, you have put up a good fight. No one had taken me to this point of using my Longinos. Issei, this is not over yet. But at that moment where Issei was, an explosion of power was created, freeing Issei from Dulo's ice, and a great steam was created when the ice melted. Issei had spent all his power in that explosion, not being able to do anything. He approached Dulo, and a hand-to-hand fight began, and Dulo, being so close, had to defend himself from Issei's blows, but seeing that Issei was exhausted he began to create a mist around him, and Issei, not being able to see him, flew with his wings and came out of the mist. But while flying, a huge thunder hit him full on and he fell and crashed on the ground, and at that moment the mist dispersed into a crater. Issei, without his armor, all hurt and unconscious. Dulo was with a few wounds but was standing. Suddenly Griselda announced that she was in the corner to the winner. Griselda, the winner is Dulo Gesualdo. The audience stood up and began to applaud the two warriors who had fought with everything. Dulo fell to the ground a little exhausted, and Griselda approached Issei, who was unconscious, and picked him up and took him away. After a few hours, Issei woke up in a bandaged room where he had received serious damage, and in front of him was Griselda reading a book, and she saw that Issei was awake. Griselda, how are you, Issei? Issei, my whole body hurts because I was hit by a truck. At that moment Dulo entered with some flowers to the room where Issei and Griselda were. Dulo, well, that truck is coming to apologize. Issei giving the flowers to Issei, and Issei receiving them in an awkward way and putting them next to the bed where Issei was. Issei, thanks Dulo, and thanks for teaching me that I need to become stronger, and I still have a long way to go to my dream. Dulo, and what is that dream, Issei? Issei, well, one of them is to become stronger to protect my loved ones, and another is, since I am the Sekiyuti and I am going to bring potential partners, is to make a harem, loudly crying face, smiling face with hard eyes. At that moment Griselda hit Issei in the head. Griselda, let that think about that sinful idea. Dulo, seeing them, laughed at how Griselda treats Issei as if she were her mother, and Issei turns around when he sees Dulo rubbing his head. Issei, and what is your dream, Dulo? Dulo, well, my dream is to try all the food in the world and take it to the orphans of the church to brighten their lives and so that they grow in a prosperous future and are not afraid of what awaits them in the future. Issei, it's a big dream, Dulo. Whatever I can, I will help you make your dream come true. Dulo thanks Issei and stop telling yourself, Issei, that you have been accepted as a high-level exorcist. Issei, seriously, that's fabulous. Now I can get stronger in less time. Dulo, how about to celebrate? I invite you to eat at a restaurant nearby where they cook in an exquisite way. Issei, sure, and what do you say, Griselda? Dulo, well, Issei, I'll wait for you outside so you can change. Dulo left the room and was going to do the same as Griselda, but Issei stopped her by taking her hand. Issei, thanks, Griselda. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have fought with Dulo, and thanks for the advice you gave me, and I think you're more worried about this than me. Giving the bouquet of flowers that Dulo brought to Issei and seeing that Griselda and Issei hugged each other at the end, Griselda left the room with a very emotional face, and when Dulo left, he saw Griselda with a mischievous face. Dulo, who would have thought that the great Griselda was so fond of the Sekiyuti winky face. Griselda, it's just your imagination, Dulo. Dulo, please see how you treated him after I defeated him. You are very overprotective of him. I see that you have a lot of affection for him. Griselda was going to answer him, but at that moment Issei came out. Issei, we're not going. Then the conversation was cut off. Dulo, sure, let's go. Then they started walking through the Vatican Hospital, leaving it, and walking to the restaurant. Chapter 8, Black Cat. It had been several weeks since Issei became a high-ranking exorcist, but his inexperience caused him to be sent to urinate very often and be in constant risk on the front lines of attack in reconnaissance urinations and elimination of enemies. Which is why in such a short time he made a name for himself in the supernatural world as the celestial dragon warrior for his dragon aura and being the bearer of the sacred sword step, and almost no one knew that he was one of the two celestial dragons. But now Issei was in Paris guarding a church headquarters that had some very important documents that according to the church spies would be stolen, and that is why Issei was guarding the church headquarters. Issei was on a winged roof of the great cathedral that was the headquarters in Paris, but suddenly inside the cathedral a shadow was seen, but an alarm began to sound and a person ran out jumping from roof to roof through the city, and Issei followed her jumping across the roofs. He followed her for a long time until the person who was being chased realized and began to throw blue flames. Issei, seeing them, began to dodge them and began to accelerate to catch up with the person he was following. When he was closer to the person, he realized that she was a black-haired girl with a pair of cat ears and two tails of the same animal, and that she was wearing a black kimono, but when he saw her face he realized that she was Kuroka, a renegade demon who was high-class and pursued by hell for various crimes. When Issei saw the level of danger, he immediately invoked his balance break, and with his thrusters in an instant he reached the Nikomata. In a few seconds he was in front of Kuroka, and she, seeing him, created a magic circle as a barrier of Issei's fist that was against her, but Issei's blow went through the magic circle, but being a few centimeters from the Nikomata she responded with a condensed sphere of Tuki that sent Issei flying to a nearby building that when it crashed into it he crossed and fell into some boxes. When he stopped, a girl's voice began to be heard. Kuroka, we have a church dog here. It seems the puppy got lost, Naya. Issei, look who says it, a stray cat that not even the demons want her. Kuroka, but if the puppy bites? Issei, the problem is that I'm not a dog but a dragon. At that moment Issei activated his thrusters and with incredible speed he moved from where Kuroka was behind some boxes. When Kuroka saw that Issei was in front of her with a sphere of condensed power that pointed at her body. Issei, it's better that you give up. I wouldn't mind killing a girl as cute as you. Kuroka, to be trapped, and upon hearing that from Issei a big smile appeared on her face. Kuroka, what nice words from someone from the church. Don't fall into temptation, Naya. Kuroka approached Issei, but as she got closer she made her desire more noticeable, and Issei, seeing her, got nervous about what he was seeing and made his energy sphere disappear. Meanwhile Kuroka got closer and closer to Issei. When she put her hand on Issei's chest she used a little senjutsu in her hand to see Issei's attributes and power, and when Touching him, a great dragon aura was felt inside him, but also a sacred aura. Kuroka, but if you are someone very special, knows Sekiudai. Issei, and how do you know that? Kuroka, girl has her secrets, and from what I see you have yours too, Naya. Suddenly, Drake's voice is heard from Issei's glove. Drake, be careful, Issei, she is an expert in senjutsu, and her race specializes in that. Hearing that, Issei jumped away from the cat girl and stood on guard. Kuroka, don't worry, I'm one of the last of my race. Since we are very good in the arts of senjutsu, we were hunted and enslaved by other races and we were massacred for the same reason. Drake, if that's how you survived. Kuroka, it's a long story that I don't feel like telling, but I can tell you that I'm not on the side of the demons, more or less, Naya. Issei, more or less like that. Kuroka, well, you see, I'm a renegade demon, so I need allies, and a person that I think you know or will know is looking for me, Naya. Issei, who is that person? Kuroka, it's the white one, Naya. Drake, Albion. Kuroka, bingo, Naya. Issei, but what do you gain by telling us that? You're just proclaiming yourself my enemy. Kuroka, well, you see, Naya, Vala only thinks about battles and fighting with very powerful people and doesn't think about other things like you, Sekiudai, Naya. Then Kuroka lowers her kimono a little and showed a little of her breasts to Issei, and he, seeing her white skin and those enormous breasts that were shown in front of him, and that slender figure that girl had, only in his mind did the images of that woman pass over and over again until his nose began to bleed, but a voice cut him off. Drake, stand firm, Issei, this cat only wants to seduce you to give you to Hakuryuku, she is an enemy. Kuroka, you haven't heard my proposition and you already consider me an enemy. Issei, that's right, Drake, we haven't let her speak. Drake, don't be a fool, he's only going to cheat on you, you're very weak against women, Issei. Kuroka, don't worry, Drake, Naya, what I'm going to ask you is something very vain. Issei, and Drake, and what that? Kuroka, as you know, my race is almost extinct, so my dream is to make my race return to its former splendor. Issei, and what does that have to do with me? Kuroka approaches Issei more sensually and hugs him by the neck. Kuroka, well, you see, for that I must leave strong offspring, so the genes of a celestial dragon would be ideal. Drake, and why are you not the white man's partner? Kuroka, well, Valley only thinks about one thing, fighting and no procreation, but fate put the other celestial dragon in front of me. Issei, and how does that benefit me? Kuroka, well, nice to meet you and many other things, Naya. Saying that with a flirtatious face to Issei, but Issei only saw him with a disgusted face and broke away from Kuroka's hug. Issei, well, that doesn't interest me, I already have a partner, and I don't need your services. Kuroka, okay, I'll tell you more about the benefits if you help me, I'll be a spy for you and anything I do is valid, I'll tell you, and Edima contacted us with a group known as the Chaos Brigade or something like that apparently wants to turn the world upside down, Naya. Drake, it's a good proposal, mate, so we'll have an advantage over white. Issei, what are you talking about, Drake? I'm not the baby bag of anyone who gives you information about white and Edima, nor do I know his name. Kuroka, my name is Kuroka Naya, and since I see that you are not convinced of what I am proposing, how about we have a date, just the two of us, Naya? Issei, what a date? No girl had asked me on a date. Drake, why will it be? Issei stood there like a fool and kept repeating the word date. Drake, my partner accepts, I'll take him, don't worry. Kuroka, okay, see you at the Eiffel Tower at 8 p.m., don't miss it. Suddenly a magic circle appeared under Kuroka's feet and disappeared into the... Drake, he's gone now, buddy, you can react now. Issei, I have a date, do you understand, Drake? What am I going to do? What am I going to wear? Drake, you just see a pretty girl and you get all hot and bothered by hormones. After a while Issei had calmed down, and Drake had explained to him where and what time the appointment was going to be. Issei was very excited, but Drake made him understand why it was bad if something went wrong with the cat girl, so he gave him several pieces of advice so that he would not fall for the charms of women. Issei left calmer because he had the support of the dragon with more than 1,000 years of experience in this. When Issei put on a more formal one with black pants and a red shirt, and activated his armor, and flew off towards the Eiffel Tower. When he arrived he found Kuroka at the top of the tower in her traditional black kimono. Kuroka, I thought you would reject me and leave me, Naya. Issei, haha, I don't think so. I wouldn't miss the date that such a cute girl invited me to. Kuroka, what things you say, Naya? Issei went down to where Kuroka was sitting. She jumped to where Issei was, and when he saw that she was falling on top of him, he caught her in princess style and having her in his arms. Kuroka, but I hadn't noticed that you were very handsome, Naya. Issei blushed a little. She approached him and licked his cheek, seeing that Kuroka got out of Issei's arms and with a very sweet face. Kuroka, and where are you going to take me, Naya? Issei, wherever you want to go, Kuroka. Kuroka, that's good, Naya. At that moment Kuroka took Issei by the arm and pulled him up the stairs, very surprised, before going down the stairs. Issei, Kuroka, you will come down so it wouldn't be very suspicious. Kuroka was seen in her kimono. Kuroka, how stupid I am, Naya, this will take a moment. Suddenly a black magic circle appeared at Kuroka's feet, and she went up, and as she went up her clothes were changing and Kuroka's clothes had changed. At that moment she took Issei by the arm, and when they got off the Eiffel Tower she took him through the City of Love. Giving tours of the most important places in the City of Love, Kuroka took him to different restaurants and clothing stores where Kuroka tried on clothes in front of Issei. Issei was embarrassed the whole time, and Kuroka liked that, and every time Kuroka spent time with Issei she liked his way of being and how he treated her. At first Kuroka thought that Issei only saw her for her body, but as more time passed on the date he asked her personal things or things that Kuroka might like. At the end of the night Kuroka walked down the street with several bags of clothes and with a very happy face, and behind her Issei crying because his money was gone in just one night. Kuroka, oh honey, don't worry, I'll make it up to you later. Kuroka told him that while winking at him. Hearing that, Issei was very happy and his sadness about his money went away, but from Issei's hand a green light spoke. Drag, that won't be possible, Nikomata. Kuroka, why do you say that? Drag, the deal is to be Issei's partner because I am his personal spy. Drag, that's fine, but when a dragon has hex with its female it leaves a mark like one of its partners, and that has a bit of the essence of Issei and mine, so the white will notice you in an instant. Kuroka, then how long do I have to wait to have babies with Issei nya? Issei, Drag is right, so we have to postpone that, but our deal is on the table, but if you want to back out I have no problem. Kuroka, no, Naya, from the time I've been with you I see that you can be a great husband, Naya, as well as being one of the most powerful beings that can exist, but this is frustrating, yeah. At that moment Kuroka took Issei and took him to the nearest bar. Upon arrival she began to drink like crazy. Issei only watched her drink, but after a few bottles of liquor she talked about her past. How she was and why the demons were looking for her, and how she had a little sister named Chiron, and how she was with the demons, and how she loved her so much, but in the end she told Issei how he was a perfect partner and husband for her, and what she would do to him when she could make babies with him. At the end of the night Issei took Kuroka to a nearby hotel. Upon arriving at the hotel room Kuroka began to kiss Issei's neck. Issei wanted to stop her, but Kuroka began to play with him. Issei, wait, Kuroka understands that we can't do it. Lemon skipped. The next morning Issei woke up with a naked Kuroka by his side. When he saw her, he gave her a kiss on the forehead, but when he gave it to her, Kuroka moved and gave it to him in the mouth. That made Kuroka wake up receiving the kiss. When she opened her eyes, Kuroka saw Issei, and when she saw him, she was relieved that she would finally have someone so good in her life. After a few minutes, Issei and Kuroka had breakfast together like a happy couple, but in the end they said goodbye. Issei went to a church headquarters and Kuroka transported to another place, but when she arrived at her team's base, in front of her were Valley, the current Hakuryuku, and Biko, the current Son Goku. Vala, where were you, Kuroka? Do you have the plans? Kuroka, I couldn't get them. Some exorcists were watching them, and I couldn't bring them. Vala, if that's it, why didn't you come back soon? Kuroka, that's none of your business. At that moment Kuroka left the room very indignant, and only Vala and Biko looked at her strangely for her way of answering Vala because a few days ago she adored him. Biko, it seems like someone is taking Kuroka away from you. Vala, I don't care as long as she keeps doing her job. And Vala and Biko also left the room. Chapter 9, Spy. A few days after Issei was with Kuroka, he had returned to the headquarters of the church in the Vatican. Upon arrival, The first to greet him was Father Vasco Strada, who upon seeing him return gave him a smile. Vasco, Issei man, just in time, you are the one I wanted to see. Issei, I wanted to see you too, old man. I have some information that is worth gold. Vasco, seriously, me too, and mine will surprise you. Issei, seriously, what is it? Vasco, apparently the 3 biblical factions are going to have a peace summit where they will discuss a peace treaty and make alliances for the benefit of all factions, so only very important people like the Seraphim will attend, so they will need bodyguards. So you and Dulo were chosen to attend as bodyguards and ambassadors of the church. So you will go to heaven with Dulo in 3 days to train and have the level to face the great rivals of the other factions. And another thing, I have discovered that the target is in the faction of the fallen angels. Issei, well, what a coincidence, I just contacted a person who is in the white group and I have him as a spy. Vasco, and that spy is trustworthy? Issei, yes, I'm sure I trust her blindly. Suddenly, the booster gear manifests in Issei's hand and the voice of the Red Emperor is heard. Dragwell, you and that cat are very close. At that moment Vasco looked at him with a confused face at the words spoken by the ancient dragon. Ask what the Red Emperor is talking about. Issei, he's just jealous that I pay attention to other people and not to him. Vasco, ha ha ha, all that's missing is for the red dragon to be a red dragon and be jealous that he's talking to other girls, ha 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 ha. Drake, what nonsense are you talking? That would be very furry. I am an alpha male dragon, scaled chest, millennial warrior, and one of the 2 celestial dragons, the one that sows terror in all the races of the planet, and that would be very unoriginal. At that moment they had arrived at the doors of the church council full of high-level fathers and bishops. Upon entering, Dulo was inside waiting for them to enter Issei, and an hour passed where the high command told them the ideals of the church and how the meeting of the 3 factions would be composed, and only each of the factions were allowed to speak in an artificial space made by the demons that would be monitored by each of the factions, and this would be a secret meeting where only 3 representatives of each faction and 2 bodyguards could enter, and if there was a confrontation each of the people would be expelled from the artificial space. After that, Issei told Dulo about his spy that he had, and he told him that for greater security for him and greater comfort for them it would be good for Issei to introduce her to him and also share information with them. Issei thought about it, and after Dre gave him a positive response. The contact with Kuroka with a magic circle had left her in bed that night. Before leaving, she accepted share information with them only if they gave her something very valuable to her. After a while in Issei's room, Dulo, Vasco, Griselda, Solomon and Issei were gathered. When he put the magic circle on the floor, a purple light began to emerge, a person who when revealed was a very cute Nikomata girl. When she saw Issei, she jumped into his arms and began to purr and rub her face with Issei's, but Issei felt uncomfortable by all the looks that were of disapproval except Griselda, whose was angry. Kuroka, seeing the environment, calmed down, but did not get off Issei's lap. Kuroka, so what do you have to offer me, Naya? Solomon, who does this girl think she is to come demanding tribute? Dulo is an SS rank criminal wanted by the demons. Vasco is an expert in senjutsu and mystical arts and belongs to the Nikomata race that is almost extinct. Griselda, and apparently she is Issei's partner. Kuroka, apparently I'm very famous in the church, Naya. Vasco, how do we know your information is reliable? Kuroka, well, they don't know if it is, but the information I have is something very, very secret, Naya. Dulo, if so, tell us something to trust you. Kuroka, then you should also give me something in return, Naya. Dulo, well, I think I'll start by telling you that your entire race is not completely extinct, but that the church has some Nikomatas under its protection, and they are one of the best exorcists produced by the church. Kuroka, and what do I care about that, Naya? Dulo, well, Issei told us how his deal was. Kuroka, okay, I'll tell you something very important, which is that I'm one of the members of the White Dragon team that is being formed in secret, and only admits very powerful, or very talented people, Naya. Vasco, and why he is forming this team in secret. Kuroka, AAA, and what do you give me, Naya? Vasco takes a poster out of his pocket, and gives it to Kuroka. Vasco, that is an official church document that means you are under my protection and people from the church will not attack you, but it will only help you a few times and only with low-ranking people. Kuroka, very good, Naya. He is forming this team to be in an organization that contacted him, and he accepted only because they promised him that he would fight with very strong people and even faction leaders. Solomon, and what is this organization that contacted them, and what do you know about it? He told her while throwing a book to Kuroka, and when she saw it, Kuroka kept it in a magic circle. Kuroka, what I know is that it's called the Chaos Brigade, and that they are planning something very big that will turn the whole world upside down. Naya. Griselda, I will give you very special information, and I think it will be very useful to you, and they are your future rivals for Issei. Kuroka, really, what are they, Naya? Griselda, one of them, and who is in a serious relationship with Issei, is Zenobia IV, a swordswoman of the church and bearer of a sacred sword. Others are a nun from a church in a remote place, and another I only know that she has a childhood friend. I don't know if she counts as a rival. Kuroka, apparently Issei turned out to be a bit rebellious. Naya. At that moment Kuroka took out her claws and stuck them into Issei's leg where she was sitting. He just moaned in pain and a small tear came out of his eye, and Kuroka seeing him. Kuroka, hold on. You don't know the pain I felt when I found out that you have other women besides me. You're a womanizer, nya. At that moment Kuroka gave Issei a small slap and sat next to him a little angry. Griselda, apparently the information was very useful, and I think you owe me 2 questions, and one of them will be who is the leader of this Chaos Brigade. Kuroka touched her chin and thought for a while. Kuroka, from what I know it's the Infinity Dragon Office, but I think it's someone else, but I'm not sure. Naya. Griselda, who are the people or beings that make up the Chaos Brigade? Griselda, then there may be traitors in the church. Thanks, Kuroka. I'll call you if I need anything else. At that moment Griselda left the room, followed by Vasco and Solomon, leaving Issei and Kuroka in the room alone. Since they were alone, Kuroka looked Issei in the eyes. Kuroka, when were you going to tell me? Issei, that. Kuroka, what do you mean, about your lovers? Issei, I was going to tell you about Zenobia, but there was no chance. I promise I was going to tell you. Kuroka stood up from where she was sitting and put her hands on her hips and made a pouty face. Kuroka, I don't believe you, as I don't know that you have other girls and that you are going to forget about me. Issei, that will never happen. I will always take care of you, since you are someone special to me, since you understand me so much, and we share so many things in common, and remember that we will revive the race of the Nikomata soon. At that moment Kuroka hugs Issei and they give each other a big kiss that lasts a few moments, that were interrupted by the voice of a red dragon. Drake, before we start a sexual act I would like to ask you something. Kuroka, and what is Dragon-kun? Drake, who are the people who accompany the white? Kuroka, for now only 2, Artur and Biko. Artur is a very talented swordsman from the Pendragon family who is a prodigy with the sword and who has in his possession one of the Excalibur, and Biko is the current Son Goku of the Western Journey and is very talented in the mixed arts and in hand-to-hand combat, and I. Drake, okay, continue with what you were going to do. Issei and Kuroka smiled and gave each other another kiss. The next day Issei and Dulo were in a special chapel where there was a sacred magic circle where they stood and a light absorbed them, and they were transported. Chapter 10, The Red Dragon Sky. A light blinded Issei and Dulo, and when they opened their eyes they saw large golden doors, very large, but the landscape was the sky, many white clouds and blue tints around them, when suddenly the large doors opened and inside them came out Michael, the leader of the angel faction. But when he came out he had his 12 wings outside, and behind him several angels and archangels, and several of them stood in front of them, forming a corridor that guided them in front of Michael. They walked like this to Michael when they arrived in front of him. At his sides there were 3 more archangels. All of them looked like Michael. But one stood out among them, a woman who had an angelic face and a heart-stopping body. When Issei saw her he stared at her, all stunned by so much beauty. Michael welcomed Issei and Dulo to heaven. Dulo gave a slight reference, but when he saw that Issei didn't do it, he inclined him to give a reference as well. But Issei, upon seeing that beautiful angel, came out of his trance. After a while, the 2 raised their heads and grabbed Michael. Dulo, thank you very much for your welcome, Archangel Michael, and I thank you on behalf of myself and the church for inviting us to such a beautiful place as heaven. Issei, it is a great honor to be present before you. Michael, it is a great honor to receive you in heaven, but your visit has a purpose for which we will explain it in a moment, but I would like to introduce you to my brothers. To my right side is Uriel, and to my left side is Raphael and Gabriel. Each one holds the position of one of the 4 archangels, and we are the ones who hold the position of maintaining our Father's system of miracles and miraculous works in heaven, and each one of us helps people with different things, like Gabriel, who is in charge of proclaiming love. And each one of us is guided by a fundamental feeling. I am in charge of the thoughts, dreams, and goals of people. Raphael, I am the archangel of bravery, courage, and strength of people. Uriel, I am the one who gives people reasoning and logic. Gabriel, as my brother said, I am the archangel of love and friendship. After the introductions, they guided Issei and Dulo to the first heaven where the low-ranking angels are. The sky was like Issei had imagined, a wasteland with many clouds, and in them stone buildings where there were houses where the low-ranking angels live. We walked for a while until we reached a stone building that upon entering was similar to a hotel where other angels greeted us. They greeted us and took us to our rooms where we were going to leave our things. We left them and went back down where the archangels were sitting in the reception of the Celestial Hotel. When we arrived, we sat in front of them. Michael, well, you should already be aware of the situation we are in with the meeting of the 3 biblical factions by the demons who summoned us to a meeting in 2 weeks in a neutral territory. Uriel, for which reason you will go as ambassadors of the church and our escorts in this very important meeting. Raphael, that's why we brought them here, to train a little and get the strength level of the people who will be present at the meeting. Gabriel, so that they do not feel intimidated at the meeting and can support us if we break off negotiations during the talks and a fight breaks out among the people present. Michael, so we will train them a little. I will train Dulo with the support of Uriel. Raphael, Issei, you will train with me and Metatron, an archangel of high prestige, which we will begin right now. At that moment an archangel with white hair, entered flapping his wings, entered through the roof and hit Issei and sent him to the outskirts of the hotel. When he saw the people, he bowed. Metatron, good morning my brothers, and nice to meet you. Dulo-san, I have heard many good things about you. I would like to have a conversation when you have time, but for now I will focus on my student. And flew out of the room after Issei. Raphael, I think I'll retire to support Issei-kun. And Raphael flew away too. Dulo, I think Issei will have a hard time. Michael, haha, my brothers are so imperative in their training. Uriel, I think we should start too. And from a magic circle he took out several thick books with pages, and only Dulo opened his eyes, but more because of the words said by Michael. Michael, oh how good brother, you brought the summarized books. Issei was surprised by the surprise blow that the angel had given him, but he soon recovered and activated his balance brake to be able to fly. As he rose into the sky, he could see the angel that had hit him. Metatron, hello Issei Hiro, I am Metatron, I will train you for the next 2 weeks, so let me see your strength, Sekiyudai. At that moment Metatron created several spears of light and threw them at Issei. He destroyed them with a dragon shot, but from the cloud of smoke Metatron came out attacking Issei with a series of blows. He only defended himself. Issei, angels shouldn't be peaceful, especially an archangel. Metatron, yes, but I am peaceful with problems in my own way. Issei, okay, then I'll show you how I solve my problems. At that moment Issei created spheres of power in his hands and threw them at Metatron. In the distance, Raphael was watching the fight between the archangel and the dragon. Raphael, it seems that the sky will become a little louder. All afternoon the great fight that was taking place in the sky could be heard until the sky darkened and the stars came out to illuminate the heavenly paradise, and the 2 combatants lay on a cloud, exhausted. Issei, I've never had a fight as impressive as that in a long time. Metatron, neither do I, you have talent, boy. The days passed while Issei and Dulo trained in heaven and polished their skills and learned others. One of them was the sacred magic that they had learned from the angels and how to create various spells. Dulo was taught by Uriel in magic and in combat by Miguel, and on Issei's side Raphael taught Issei magic, and with Metatron they had fights that echoed throughout the sky, and that was happening at this moment. In the sky several blows were heard, and between the clouds 2 silhouettes were in a fist fight when Metatron hit an Issei with his armor and sent him to one of the buildings to collide with him, but Issei resisted the clash, and with his wings he took momentum and charged against the archangel, creating several spheres of power that he threw against him. But the archangel countered it with sacred spears that created a smoke screen, but it cleared immediately when Issei and Metatron clashed. Their fists, and created a shockwave, cleared the smoke, and another hand-to-hand combat began until Metatron hit Issei with great force that sent him flying, but before colliding and smashing a building to pieces, a magic circle swallowed Issei. Metatron again, she never lets him get hurt, she treats him like a child. Metatron flew away. In another place in the sky there was an Issei all beaten up on a couch lying down, and a Gabriel healing his bumps and bruises with her magic. Issei, why do you keep saving me from Metatron's beatings? Gabriel, because I do not disagree with the way my brother trains you. Issei just sighed and let the Archangel do her job while he discreetly looked at the beautiful silhouette of the Archangel at his side. Issei, in his thoughts, that's why he is the Archangel of Love, I would like to give him love. Drake, but you know, brat, that she only sees you as a little brother. Issei, thoughts, shut up, Drake. Drake, ha ha ha, accept reality, boy. Issei, thoughts, I'm leaving now, you're just bothering me, lizard. Drake, wait, boy, I just wanted to tell you one thing. Issei, thoughts, and what is it? Drake, well, I have felt like a connection or something that calls me from heaven. Issei, thoughts, you're crazy, you know that nobody will take us there. Drake, I'm just saying that maybe there is something that makes us stronger, but I haven't figured out what it is. Gabriel, Issei, are you okay? Suddenly Issei heard that voice come out of his mind very quickly and got up, but when he stood up he collided with some lumps that when he touched them with his face he felt like fluffy clouds. Issei had collided with Gabriel's breasts, but when he realized it he moved and moved away from them, but he only saw how Gabriel was very close to him, almost giving him a kiss. Gabriel, Issei, are you okay? You are very red. As he got closer and closer to Issei. Issei, yes, I'm fine, I'm just a little tired from the fight. Gabriel, I'm sure you know very well that you can count on me for anything. Suddenly more booster gear materialized and Drake spoke. Drake, an apology for my carrier is just a little stressed because the last few days we have received a song that comes from the seventh heaven, and we don't know what it is. Gabriel M. Issei, thoughts, damn Drake, you take advantage of Gabriel-san's kindness to find out what is calling you in the seventh heaven. Drake, thoughts, you wanted me to tell him that you were like this because you were looking at his body, damn pervert. Issei, thoughts, no. Gabriel, the truth is that after the death of Father we do not know much about the artifacts he has in his workshop or how the mechanism of miracles and secret war works. Let me talk to my brothers if you can enter the seventh heaven. Issei, are you sure? I wouldn't like to get you in trouble. Gabriel, it's not a problem if it helps you to be stronger, it's fine. Issei left Gabriel's room in the sixth heaven and opened a magic circle to the first heaven where his room was. When he arrived, he just laid down and fell asleep in his bed. The next day Issei was being escorted by several archangels to the seventh heaven. Drake appeared and had been able to talk to the other archangels to take him to the seventh heaven. Before entering, there were two large statues of celestial warriors guarding the doors of the seventh heaven. Michael, they are warriors called thrones that God made to take care of his throne, or better known as the seventh heaven. Upon entering the seventh heaven, it was a large room with various machines and artifacts on columns and everything decorated with gold and marble, and with large furniture, and even a huge bed and several shelves with manuscripts and books. Issei, and where is the artifact where the secret wort and the miracle system are made? Gabriel is in that direction, pointing to a corner of the big house. Michael, in this machine it shows us how many miracles and secret wist are active, so we are linked to the machine for it to work at this moment. I am the one who has half of my magic in it, but it is not working well because I am not strong enough to hold the whole mechanism, so my brothers help me keep it afloat. Issei was watching how slowly the celestial machine was riding in front of him, but suddenly the gauntlet materialized in his hand and Drake's voice was heard. Drake, over there, Issei, that piece calls me. At that moment, as if it were a magnet, Issei was attracted to one of the columns. When Issei saw that he was going to crash into it, he activated his armor to fly up the column with his dragon wings. He flew up, and when he reached the abyss, he found two metallic eggs, one red and the other white. The red egg attracted Issei and the booster gear stuck to him. Drake, Issei, I already know what it is. Please take the red egg and let the booster gear consume it. Then Issei turned to see the archangels who were behind him to ask for permission, and they just nodded, and Issei took the red egg with the hand where the gauntlet was, and suddenly a deep red light from the glove entered the egg and a crimson red light flooded the room. Issei, Drake, what's going on? Drake answers. And suddenly, from the egg that Issei was holding, it was seen hatching and a small red dragon came out of it. Drake, stop yelling, Issei. Issei saw the little dragon speak like Drake and was very surprised, and everyone around was the same and gathered around the little dragon. Issei, Drake is you. Chapter 11, Divine Dragon. Everyone was shocked by what they had seen, the rebirth of one of the heavenly dragons, the red dragon of domination, the Sekiyutai. No one said anything, they just looked at the little red dragon that was on the ground when suddenly the dragon flew into the air and with great force screamed, Drake, I'm alive, I'm damn alive. Suddenly one of the sentinels walked and hit the little dragon, leaving him on the ground and unconscious in a crater made by the blow. After a while the little dragon woke up, but before waking up he felt like someone was holding him, and he felt as if it were a cloud that comforted him and filled him with hope and love. But when he felt that, one of the two celestial dragons opened his eyes to see who was the person who made him have those feelings, but when he saw that it was the most beautiful woman in heaven, Gabriel the seraph, the little dragon, the only thing he could do was blush a little at that angelic presence, but he soon recovered, and with a flutter he came out of the arms of the archangel, all pink from seeing so much beauty. Drake, why did this stupid rock hit me? Michael, in the house of God you cannot say bad words, so if someone says them, the guards have the duty to punish that person. Drake just looked at him furiously, and went to where Issei was and stood on top of his head. Issei, Drake, could you tell us what happened, and why you are outside the booster gear? Drake, I really don't know, but it seems that the biblical God created artificial bodies so that we could reincarnate, but I really don't know at what point the biblical God created these bodies and what conditions there are or benefits to using them. Uriel, why don't you try releasing your aura, because the one you have doesn't look like Issei's, which expels a different aura. Drake got off Issei's head and everyone moved away from the little dragon when a powerful aura began to come out of the small body that made Drake grow and grow until his adult dragon size, but when he wanted to move his aura suddenly decreased, and his size returned to his baby dragon size, but when he saw the little one he looked exhausted. Drake, apparently I don't have all my power, but it will take a while for me to regain all my strength. Issei, and how many artifacts did God leave behind? Michael, many, but we don't know what they do. Out of respect for our father we don't touch any of his things. Drake, but how stupid they are. Suddenly one of the sentinels looked at Drake in the face, and then turned around when he saw the little dragon shrinking. Drake, he said that you were careless for thinking that. Maybe he left you so that you could lean on each other when he was no longer with you. Uriel, maybe the Sekiyutai is right, we can see the results with Issei and Drake. Michael thought about it for a while, thought about it until he saw his seraphim brothers and they just gave him a nod. Michael, okay, we will investigate Father's objects. That day several angels and archangels searched and reviewed every document that God had in the seventh heaven. Issei also helped search for information. He found a book called The Beast of the Apocalypse Triaxa. He read it while following the little red dragon, already known throughout heaven as Drake the Red Dragon and Celestial Dragon. Apparently, although Drake is outside the booster gear, he is still linked to it, and therefore takes power and stores it for future fights, but he still has a long way to go to learn about his new body. But suddenly he collided with something and saw that it was a pillar, but Drake climbed up on it. Issei followed him with the wings of his armor, and when they reached the abyss he saw that it was where he had found Drake's red egg, but he had forgotten about the other white egg. Issei, what are we doing here? Drake, keep quiet, Issei. At that moment Drake took the white egg and gave it to Issei. Drake absorbed the white egg and stored it inside the booster gear. Issei, but why do you want this, Drake? We are stealing from God. Drake, God created this for the two celestial dragons, but I will take it to bribe Albion. Drake said that with a sinister face, and Issei just absorbed the egg while he looked at it with a confused face, but Raphael brought him out of Drake's delusions. Raphael, Issei, Drake. Michael requests them alongside the miracle mechanism and secret gear. Drake Volt with the face of an angelic dragon. Drake, we're going right now, Raphael-san. And at that moment Drake and Issei flew out to where Michael was, and when they arrived where Michael was, Issei, why did he call us Michael? Michael, well, I would like Drake to see these writings on God's machine. Drake sees the writings on the machine and sees that in one of them is the symbol of the Sekiyutai. When he sees it, he touches it, but nothing happens. Drake, Issei, you can come here. Issei approached, and between the two of them they pressed the symbol. Suddenly a red light enveloped them together with a celestial aura, and suddenly a symbol was created on Issei's arm. Suddenly the mechanism that God created for miracles and the secret gear began to transform into a red orb with many buttons, and a control panel where everything was written in a strange type of writing. At that moment, Michael approached Issei and saw the tattoo that appeared on Issei's arm. Michael, appear if it is true what we saw in those notes that Father left us, that any carrier who has a Longinus that has a soul or a being sealed in it can take charge of its heaven system, since they are two souls or beings and can withstand so much pressure and generate aura or magic to make the machine work faster and more efficiently, but the problem is that I do not recognize that writing on the board. At that moment several of the oldest and wisest angels approached to see if they knew that language, but suddenly a laugh began to be heard and everyone turned to the little red dragon. Drake, ha 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 ha, the language of God can only be read by those who lived in the year zero, who are the oldest dragons and primordial gods of each mythology. Issei, and how do you know that, Drake, and that it is year zero? Drake points to the screen and says, Drake, it says it on the screen, and the year zero is when in this universe there was nothing, only the oldest beings, the dragons and celestial beings that wandered in the dark space, but soon they got bored and created everything and blah blah, and I don't feel like explaining. Michael and Drake, you can adjust the heaven system to improve things in heaven and the miracle system on earth. Drake, I think so, let me check. At that moment the little red dragon began to move that control panel and several noises began to be heard, buttons, keys and levers, when suddenly a light emanated from the system towards the earth and a bell rang in the sky. At that moment in a machine that looked like an automatic machine that was near the sky system began to move, and from it a baby came out of white and brown tea with two small wings. Suddenly several gasps of surprise came out, seeing that new angels could now be born. Several ran to see the new cherub except the four archangels, and suddenly they said to Drake with a threatening voice, Raphael, what are the changes you made, Drake? Michael, and please don't lie to us, as we don't tolerate lying. Gabriel, since no cherub had been born since father died. Uriel speaks, red dragon. Seeing that, Issei protected Drake and raised his aura in front of the four archangels, but Drake didn't let him and raised his aura as well. Drake, they shouldn't create conflict where there are no brats, and the only thing I did was put Issei and I as system support just like you, and thus have more power for the miracles and the secret gear, and then there was a little left over, and I directed it to the angel creation machine, and that was it. Michael, thanks, Drake, and forgive us for distrusting you. Drake, there was only one problem. There was so little power that only one angel could be born each week and nothing more. Uriel, how could you create more angels if God is not there to give them form and feelings? Drake, well, you see, since I didn't have God's DNA, I used the DNA of the people who give power to the system, and I made everything random about their personalities. Drake said that while laughing at what he had done, while Issei imagined the possibilities that one of those angels only has the DNA of Issei and the most beautiful angel in heaven, Gabriel, while Issei was thinking that a little blood dripped from his nose in front of everyone, and they saw Issei like that, everyone looked at him with disappointment. Except Gabriel, who was praying for his lustful soul. That night Drake and Issei were going to sleep since they were tired from everything they had done. When Drake was lying in his bed and Issei was getting ready to sleep. Drake, Issei, do you remember when I said that I had taken the DNA of those who gave power to the heaven system? Issei, yes, and that's what. Drake, is that I only took the DNA of two people, yours and that of the Archangel Gabriel. Issei, hearing that, started to bleed from his nose, and he took Drake in a strong hug and with tears telling him, Issei, thanks mate, thank you very much, how can I repay you? Drake, who was being strangled by Issei's hug, told him, Drake, first you should stop choking me. Issei left it since Drake was turning purple. Drake, since I helped you have children with the most beautiful woman in heaven, I want you to hold high the name of Sekiyutai. Issei, still crying. Issei, I will do it, partner, you will see that I will be the best Sekiyutai. In the last few weeks Issei trained like crazy so much that he was able to surpass the power of an archangel, and with his and Drake's effort they were able to awaken several abilities of the booster gear, but apart from that, with the help of Drake and together with the angels, they discovered that Issei's mark gave him sacred powers of an angel, so they could use sacred magic and manipulation of it, for which he was also trained in those aspects by Metatron and Raphael. At this moment Issei and Dulo were at the gate of heaven with the 4 archangels as they were going to the secret meeting of the biblical factions. They were just waiting for one of the mouths since they had called the meeting. Soon the magic circle appeared, a man with fair skin and crimson hair, with a very powerful aura and with a face that did not reflect any emotion. Xerxes, I never thought I would reach heaven as a demon. Chapter 12. The Meeting. In a room were gathered the most powerful beings of the biblical factions and the leaders of each of them, and all were gathered in an artificial dimension made by the demons, in which there is a 2-story building where in one of the rooms the leaders of each faction and their respective bodyguards were gathered, all of them sitting at a triangular table on the side of the fallen angels. Azazel, leader of the fallen angel faction. Baraquiel, sub-leader. Benemu, secretary of the fallen angels. Kokabeel, Grigori director. Bodyguard. Vala Lucifer, bearer of the Divide and bearer of the white celestial dragon, and descendant of one of the original demon kings. Tabio is the owner of the Longinus Canis Lycaon alias /dog, one of the best Grigori warriors. Each of them is at the level of a faction leader or more in the case of the Vala, the bearer of one of the celestial dragons, and who is named the strongest Hakuryuku in history. On the other hand, there were the demons. Xerxes Lucifer, from the Gremry clan, a super demon who is the strongest in existence, and a power to fear. Ajuka Beelzebub, from the Astaroth clan, is at the level of a super demon, and has very advanced magical knowledge. He is one of the monsters in this room. Falbium Asmodeus, from the Glaciolabilus clan, another of the most powerful demons, not speaking of raw power but in his strategies and demonic abilities. They are 4 demons who were born with immense power, equivalent or superior to the 4 great original Mao. On the other hand, their bodyguards were not far behind. Graphia Lucifuge, Xerxes' wife and his queen in the demonic games, and known as the most powerful woman in hell, rivaling Sarah Fall Leviathan herself. Serord Baal is the next heir of the Baal house. He is a young promise and candidate for Demon King, but his abilities are a mystery. On the other hand, we are the faction of heaven made up of the 4 archangels. Michael, heaven's leader. Gabriel, archangel. Raphael, archangel. Uriel, archangel. None of them are known for their magical prowess, but they have great power and magical abilities, and since they master the light, they have the advantage over the others, since they are weak against it. And Dulo and I, with our abilities, are capable of fighting these super powerful beings. Everything in the room was in awkward silence. The faction leaders looked at each other when suddenly the leader of the fallen angels spoke. Azazel, I think we've come to see a ceasefire between the biblical factions and peace between them. Uriel, it's easy to say it, brother, but it's not so easy to do it. To do this, we must have several agreements and rules that we must put on the table. Ajuka Archangel Uriel is right, we must put the terms on the table to sign peace. Kokabeel, why, how are you sure we want peace? Everyone turned to see the caterer with disgusted faces and Kokabeel with a malevolent face and getting up from the table and while walking. Kokabeel, why should we sign peace if we want the fallen angels to be able to defeat the remaining factions? Xerxes, and why are you sure of that, Kokabeel-san? Kokabeel Jajaja, even if you are a super demon and you are in the strongest existences, but your troops are in decline due to the civil war they had where they lost several demonic pillars, and while in heaven no more angels can be born, they are in the same situation, but on the contrary the fallen angels can have offspring, and for which our ranks are full of fallen angels, and in addition Azazel has gathered several secret gear bearers, and Edemas we have one of the celestial dragons on our side. At that moment the fallen angel sat back down and looked at everyone with a face full of confidence, and Vala, who was the bearer of the White Emperor, did not say anything, he just ignored the words of the fallen ones. Suddenly in the room Xerxes spoke. Xerxes, since the fallen angel is so confident that he has the upper hand since he gave some information about his military assets, We will also do our part since we have been using the human-to-demon reincarnation program for a few years, which is why we have increased our numbers and since we reincarnate humans. Some have some secret gear inside and support the demonic power. And the demon king sat down with a poker face while Kokabeel looked at him angrily. At that moment, Archangel Michael stood up and spoke with a harmonious voice. Michael, since we are all on this topic, I am honored to give the good news that a series of events caused new angels to be born, so in a few years we will have the same angels as when Father was with us. At that moment everyone was amazed by such a revelation, but the most amazed was Azazel, who had an improper Azazel, but as they could, the system could only support the power to perform miracles, and only when Father was there was his power that made more angels be born. How is that possible? I have been reviewing the system for years. Azazel was out of control, but at that moment Michael continued speaking. Michael, and I am also pleased to tell you that not only the fallen angels have a celestial dragon, but with us is the Sekiyudii, and the most powerful red dragon of all time, and since he was able to revive Drake, the original red dragon, we angels are at the highest point of military power. Everyone was surprised by such a revelation, and it was more so because his predestined rival was a few meters away from him, and he had not been able to recognize him or feel his aura, but then the wings of the white dragons suddenly appeared and a voice was heard from them. Albion, that is impossible. If the red one was nearby it would have detected it, and it is impossible for us to revive since we are only sealed souls. Leader of heaven, let me tell you that it is a lie. He couldn't finish speaking when the booster gear manifested, and from there a green light appeared, and from there came the little drake. Everyone was surprised by the dragon that came out of the gauntlet that Issei had, and the little dragon with a smug face began to speak. Drake, what's wrong, Albion? Can't you understand that I'm at a higher level than you? Albion, ha ha ha, even if you revive 1,000 times you will never be able to defeat my bearer. He is more powerful because you are present before the son of one of the original demon kings. He is Vala Lucifer. At that moment everyone opened their mouths in astonishment. Drake, ha ha ha, how stupid of you to tell me why Issei is the bearer of a sacred dragon-killing sword that makes you X4, you are an idiot, ha 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 ha. At that moment Drake was in front of Vala, roaring in his face, which annoyed the white-haired man, who increased his aura to hit the annoying dragon, but at that moment Issei moved quickly, taking out a step and running to where Vala was to give him a vertical slash, but he was blocked by a black sword held by Slash Dog. But none of them could move because the feet of the three were frozen by Dulo at that moment. Michael, Issei, Dulo, we are not here to fight if we are not here to sign the peace. At that moment Slash Dog and Dulo left their powers and retreated, but Issei and Drake were in front of Vala looking into each other's eyes from both sides with a murderous aura that seemed like they would start a fight at that moment. But at that tense moment Gabriel stood up and went where Issei was, and taking Issei and Drag by the hand he took them away from Vala and then hugged Issei to calm down when he saw that Benemu wanted to do the same, but Vala ignored her and went to a corner a little annoyed, but the angriest was Azazel for seeing how the most beautiful woman in heaven was very affectionate with the Sekiyudii and hugged him, and he with a very hurt face is hugging the angel. Azazel, I think it would be a little better if the bodyguards waited for us in the next room so that they do not interrupt the meeting any further. At that moment Gabriel released Issei and went to sit in his place while everyone left the room to go to a room next door. Everything had calmed down, and the leaders continued with the treaties while in the room next door the bodyguards were separated. In a corner was Vala and Slash Dog leaning against the wall, while they saw Issei and Drake sitting on an armchair, and the white-haired Mai was standing next to the door, while Serorg was sitting on a medium armchair in front of Issei and Dulo staring at them while Dulo was reading a book, and Drag was on Issei's lap looking at Vala who was in the corner, and Issei was lost in his perverted thoughts and remembering the hug he had with Gabriel, and a drop of blood came out of his nose, but everything broke when Serorg spoke to Issei who was in his perverted ideas. Issei came out of those ideas and introduced himself and Dulo to Serorg, and they began to talk about how it was their training in the church and on Serorg's side of what it was like to experience as a demon. They talked so much that when they realized this Slash Dog had joined the conversation, and they ended up talking as if they had known each other all their lives, and even Vala was sitting listening to the talk. The only one who was not in the conversation was the white-haired girl, when suddenly the door opened and the leaders all entered with satisfied faces that they had signed the peace except for one Kokabeel who had an annoyed face when he arrived with them. Sirs, well, today has been a memorable day for the three biblical factions because we have signed an alliance for which we have decided to send one of you to another faction to get to know each other better and have good diplomatic relations. Seraphol, which is why we have decided to send you Serorg-san to the fallen angels so that you can exploit your Longinus more and improve, and you can also take your nobility so that they gain experience. Benemu, on the other hand, the angels gave you permission to go to heaven to reach the power of the Sekiuti and improve your skills with the white celestial dragon. Michael, on your side, Issei Sirs told me about a survivor of the Bloody Sacred Sword project who is a vassal of his sister, so you will go to your hometown of Kuo to study high school and be able to meet your friend. Everyone was satisfied with what the leaders had said, and they were also told that no one knew anything about the treaty, only those present, and that another meeting would be held to formalize it and make it known to the supernatural world, but that would still have to be seen at the time and when it was due. A few days had passed since the meeting and the signing of the peace of the three biblical factions, and Issei was sitting in a building looking at his ancient city when next to him Vala was recharged and saw the city with Issei. Vala, I don't know what you see in this red city. Issei, a person who only thinks about fists, wouldn't see it. Well, I'm leaving because the Demon King is waiting for me. Vala, wait, you won't tell me how you reached that level of power. At that moment Issei jumped off the building with a smiling face. Issei, that wasn't in the deal. Seeing that, Vala just got angry and disappeared into a magic circle. Chapter 13, A New Life. Hello, I'm Issei Hyudo. I'm an average high school student. I'm in second year, and the only thing I'm known for is the perverted beast of the Kuo school, since I really like spying on the girls in the locker room and they've never caught me. They've only been able to find my friends Matsuda and Motohama, which is why they are known as the perverted trio, except that I'm the most feared because they haven't found me spying, and what's more, right now I'm spying on the kendo girls who are changing through a hole in the wall, seeing the magnificent bodies of Ketes and Murayama, who have amazing bodies at their age. Murayama is a brown-haired girl with an enviable figure with large apes, but her friend Ketes is not far behind, although she does not have apes as big as her friends. She has an amazing and firm butt and a huge butt that drives me crazy. At this very moment a little blood comes out of my nose for everything I have imagined, and my friends are the same since they are at my side in other holes watching the festival of ape and butts. When suddenly a noise was heard behind us, and when we turned around the girls were there. Random girl, now we have you as CI. When they saw the girls, there were only Matsuda and Motohama trembling from being surrounded by enraged girls with wooden katanas, when only the blows of the massacre that they gave to the two members of the perverted trio were heard when the girls got tired and left, leaving the two boys almost dying, when suddenly from one of the trees Issei comes down unharmed. Issei, I'm sorry guys for not helping you, but I didn't want to stay to get beaten and I had to escape. At that moment Matsuda and Motohama stood up, all angry. Matsuda, you never help us, Issei, and you always leave us stranded. Motohama, I don't know how you do it, Issei, but we are going to get even with you, Issei. At that moment the two boys begin to chase Issei with murderous instincts. Issei's mind, this is my day-to-day life being an average student and teenager, but what nobody knows is that I am one of the most powerful beings on earth, being an exorcist and faithful follower of the church, a bearer of a Longinus and bearer of a sacred sword, and more titles. But at that moment, near where the boys were chasing Issei in an old building, a red-haired girl was watching everything. At that moment Issei felt that someone was watching him, and when he turned to see the building of the occult club where he could see Rias, the little sister of one of the demon kings who has this city under her protection, but the truth is that she is not very clever. Let's say because I have been living in the city of Kuo for more than a year, and she has not noticed my presence. But she also told the Demon King Sirzesh's Lucifer not to say anything to anyone, and that my presence should pass as if nothing, like one more person, until the alliance of the three biblical factions was announced. When Rias saw that boy saw how he saw him from afar, he entered at that same moment the building where his queen Akeno and best friend is. Rias, Akeno, who is that boy? Akeno era Rias, interested in a boy. Rias, Akeno, it's just because I feel a hidden power in him, and he could be a good piece in my family. Akeno, I think it's Hyodo Issei, and he's in his second year, and I think he's a frequent contractor of Kiba if I remember correctly. Rias, then I will accompany Kiba the next time he summons me and see his skills and characteristics firsthand, and thus I will be able to see if he is suitable to be reincarnated as a demon. School classes had already ended and Issei was heading home, and when he was crossing a bridge a girl approached him. Yuma Issei-san. At that moment Issei turned around and saw a black-haired girl with pink eyes and a great figure with a body that not everyone has, with a balance between breasts and hips, with shapely legs and a surreal beauty. But Issei not only saw his body but also his aura, since it had celestial and dark touches like those of a fallen angel. Yuma. Hello Issei, I'm Yuma. I've seen you pass by here every afternoon, and you've always seemed like a fascinating boy to me, so I'd be very daring if you could be my boyfriend. Issei continued with the performance of the fallen angel to find out what his plans were, so he put on a surprised face. Issei, you really want to hang out with me, but I'm a mess. Yuma, it doesn't matter. I've seen that you are a pure-hearted person, and so if you want to be my boyfriend. Issei, CLA, of course. Yuma, how nice. How about we go out tomorrow? At that moment Yuma gives him a paper with his number and runs away. Issei is left all amazed at what had happened after the girl left. Issei noticed another presence. Issei, then they sent Kuroka's sister to watch me. At that moment Issei took his things and went home. When he arrived, it was the same house where he lived as a child. When he entered, he noticed that the presence of the little Nikomata was gone, and he entered his house. When he entered, he took off his shoes and went to the living room, where a lot of noise was heard, and when he saw that it was a small red dragon that was playing a video game with many bags of chips around him while he yelled at the television. Drag damn one-handed people, if they didn't know how to shoot ag, I didn't revive to endure this kind of people. At that moment the little dragon throws the remote control aside to where Issei was standing, who dodges it. Issei, calm down Drag, since you started playing video games and anime you've changed a lot. Drag, shut up jerk. Issei, the otaku dragon tells me. Drag, you are a precocious teenager. Issei, and you are a damn stinky dragon that smells like eggs. Drag, what did you say, vermin? At that moment Drag and Issei started a mini-fight in the living room, when suddenly Issei's cell phone rang, and when he saw who it was he answered, giving a pause signal to Drag, who went to the kitchen for something to eat. Issei, what happened, Estrada Dano? Estrada, a tragedy has occurred. Issei, this is an injustice, you are nonsense. Issei, calm down teacher, what happened? Estrada, it seems that Asia was in the convent where she was and a demon approached her, and since she is such a good person she healed her wounds, which is why the church branded her as a heretic, and now I don't know where she is. Issei, what do you mean you don't know where it is? You've already contacted Heaven, Master. Estrada, I have already informed them, but they say they can't do anything. Issei, thanks for letting me know, Master. Let's see what I can do. At that moment Issei hangs up the phone and goes to look for Drag. The next day at school, Issei was arriving at his classroom calmly, but upon entering he was attacked by his two friends Matsuda and Motohama, wanting to hit him, but Issei dodged them easily until they were able to catch him and hold him with their arms when the classroom door opened again and the prince of the school, Kiba Yudo, entered. Kiba, good morning, guys. Would you allow me to talk to Issei for a moment? Seeing the boy's smile and kindness, Issei's two friends let go of him and Issei followed Kiba into the hallway. When he arrived with Kiba, he put on a serious face. Kiba, Issei, I have to give you some bad news. Issei, and what is it about? Kiba, it seems that my mistress has already realized your power and wants to recruit you as a member of her family. Issei, I have no way to save myself. Kiba, I don't think so, but you can talk to Surzex to clarify your issue with Bucho. At that moment Issei remembers how Surzex introduced him to Kiba and how their reunion was after a long time since that accident at the bloody convent. When they saw each other they hugged each other, and even tears came out of their reunion. Issei and Surzex sold the idea to Kiba that Issei was a renegade exorcist and that he was escaping because he had stolen a very important object from the church. From that moment Issei and Kiba saw each other in secret as if it were another contract from the demonic world. Just like at school they lived together, which is why the rumor had spread that Issei and Kiba were homosexuals and that they were boyfriends, and that is why they saw each other secretly, which had brought problems to the two in the present. Issei, I don't want to bother the Demon King, so I have to solve this problem myself. Kiba, you are not alone, Issei. Kiba said that while he put his hand on Issei's shoulder to comfort him, but a noise behind them distracted them. It was the girls from Issei's classroom who were taking photos of the beautiful moment that Issei was having, and Kiba, seeing that, Issei got angry and yelled, "Issei, damn it." After school, Issei would go home while remembering that Kiba told him that his master, and he would come that same night to evaluate his skills, but before that Issei had talked to Yuma and would have his date with Yuma that same afternoon. Issei arrived home, changed, and went to the date with Yuma, which was in the center of the city. Issei arrived a little early to the date, and when he was waiting, a girl passed by and gave him a pamphlet, and when he saw it, he saw that it was a magic circle of the Gremry clan, and he put it in his pants pocket. At that same moment, Yuma arrived with a cute good girl dress that highlighted her figure, and they began their date. Issei took her to try on clothes, to eat, and to the games, and they were almost finished their date with a walk in the park, and when they arrived at a fountain, Yuma stood in front of Issei and said, "Yuma, Issei, I love you and I like you a lot, but I would like you to do me a favor." "Issei, anything for you, Yuma-chan." "Yuma, die for me, Issei." "Issei, what?" "Yuma, die for me, Issei." At that moment, Yuma began to transform into a fallen angel, and the sky began to turn purple. Issei saw how Yuma transformed, and he just stood still while Reincarnation created a spear of light in her hands and licked it with her tongue. Reincarnation, Issei-kun dies, throwing the spear at Issei, but Issei's bare hand took the spear and destroyed it with just his brute force. Reincarnation, seeing this, was amazed and was afraid of the person in front of her. "Reincarnation, who are you, bastard?" "Issei, I'm your worst nightmare, but I won't stain my hands with your dirty blood." At that moment, Issei took out the pamphlet with the Gremry emblem, and it gave him a little power to be able to summon a demon. At that moment, Rias and Kiba came out of the magic circle, thinking that they had been summoned for their contract, but they were surprised to see in front of them a fallen angel and winged Issei. "Issei, I think your opponents have arrived, Yuma-chan, or rather Reincarnation, second-rate fallen angel." Hearing that, Reincarnation became even more frightened, creating 2 spears of light, throwing them at Issei, and once again with his hands he destroyed those spears, surprising the demonic duo. "Reincarnation, if I want to get out alive, I won't be able to do it alone." At that moment, another 3 magic circles are created, and from there come out 3 fallen angels. "Issei, I think the numbers are even." At that very moment, the Queen and Tower of Gremry arrive. "You would, Issei Hyoto, after this we need to talk very seriously, Issei." Looking around, Rias sees that Issei is no longer there, but she couldn't do anything because she dodged some spears of light, and a fight between fallen angels and demons began, while she was already far away from there, smiling as she went home. Chapter 14, A Reunion. The day after what happened in the park, Issei was going to school like any other normal day. When Issei was entering the school, he saw Kiba standing at the entrance of the school. "Kiba, hi Issei, I think you owe me an explanation, right?" Issei scratching his head. "Issei, haha, I think so." Then Kiba took Issei to the occult club. When Issei and Kiba arrived at the club, all its members were inside at the tower of Kaneko. Tujo, Kuroka's sister, who was sitting in an armchair eating some sweets with a bandage on her head apparently from yesterday's fight. At the back of the room was Rias Gremry, the sister of one of the demon kings, who was sitting at a desk with a poker face, and next to her was her trusted queen Akeno Himiima, one half fallen angel and half demon, and daughter of one of Grigory Baraquil's caterers, who like the Nikomata had some wounds from last night's battle. "Kiba, we have arrived, President." Rias thanks Kiba for bringing young Hyoto. "Very well, Issei, could you explain to me what happened yesterday?" While saying that, he released a bit of his demonic aura to intimidate the boy, but Issei was unfazed. "Issei, I'm sorry, President Rias, for summoning them like that suddenly yesterday. I was very scared when I saw that fallen angel and I panicked, and the only thing I thought about was summoning them." "Akeno, but if you look very confident in the scene, you even destroyed some spears of light from those fallen angels." Rias, Akeno is right, that excuse will not work. I know you are a renegade exorcist, my own brother told me, so I will not beat around the bush. I want you in my peerage. Issei, you are a special person and I would like to help you. What is it that you want? Protection, power, revenge, prestige, or do you want women? Tell me, Issei, what is it that you want? Issei, hahaha, I don't think so, Miss Rias. I'm not selling myself or wanting anything. I just want to have a quiet life without problems. You laugh. Well, that's not going to be possible with your past. I give you protection, and the only thing I ask of you in return is that you be my servant. Issei, I think this conversation will not go any further. I am not interested in belonging to a demonic clan. I am not so much to stoop so low to serve someone, much less a demon. At that moment Issei turns around to leave, but when he was opening the door, Rias, this is just a proposal, Issei, because the angels from last night escaped, and you have no protection since we cancelled your contract with Kiba, and you will not be able to call him anymore. I give you this opportunity, Issei, so you can live in peace just with a small sacrifice. Issei, I don't need anyone's protection, and I don't disagree with sacrificing my soul and giving it to a demon, much less to a spoiled little girl like you. At that moment Issei left the room and left Rias all angry about the last words said by the boy. That day was very tense for Issei because of the Rias clan and the clan of the other heiress of the Leviathan clan, but everything changed when Issei arrived home upon hearing a familiar voice. Drake, damn, this idiot hasn't bought anything to eat since I went to heaven. Issei entering the house with some groceries and watching as the little dragon searched for something to eat in the refrigerator. Issei, Drake, how good that you returned. What news do you bring me? Drake, first give me something to eat, and then I'll say ungrateful. At that moment Issei takes out the pantry and starts cooking while telling Drake everything that had happened while he was gone. Drake, ha ha ha, I'm leaving for a few days and look at everything you do, ha ha ha, you're a disaster, Issei. Issei, better stop mocking and tell me what you found out about Asia. Drake, well, let me tell you that tracking a secret gear from the sky mechanism tracking system was very difficult for me, and even more so because the hateful Albion was there and I couldn't work comfortably. Issei, yes, then tell me about your fights against the white man, better tell me where Asia is. Drake, I'm more impressed, but well, your female is on her way here. Issei, what is that, and what is it doing in Japan? Drake, calm down, Issei. Apparently after what happened in the church she was contacted by the fallen angels and was convinced to come to Japan to hide from the church. Issei, how do you know all that, Drake, and when is Asia coming to Japan and where? Drake, calm down, Issei, I'm going to tell you. The first thing I know is that I captured with the secret gear location system from heaven that several auras of fallen angels were with her, and when your girlfriend comes to me she had taken a plane to get there. Issei, so tomorrow Asia arrives in Japan, but where will she arrive? Issei said that with some concern. At that moment Drake took out a tablet with gold decorations from a magic circle. Drake, well, I don't know what you're going to do. I have a device that can track her. Issei, Drake, where did you get that from? Don't tell me what it is. Drake, ha ha ha, yes, it is a remote control of the sky system. Issei, and how did the archangels give you permission to bring that? Drake, well, the truth is I didn't tell them, ha ha ha. Issei, you're going to get into serious trouble for doing that. Drake, we're going to get into trouble, and it's better that this stays between us since the archangels don't know, and this is just to rescue your girlfriend. Issei, okay. Better tell me when Asia will arrive. Drake, Alperseer will arrive tomorrow. Issei, well, it's decided. Tomorrow we'll go out to find Asia and take her away from those fallen angels. Drake, yes, but I think that first I'm going to watch a series or play. Tomorrow we'll see. The next day Issei left his house very early with the celestial tablet. That is how he had put the device that controlled the heaven system. He walked towards a park where Asia's signal was. Upon arriving he saw Asia disoriented in the middle of the park. When Issei saw an older Asia, the girl he had left in that convent, he saw that she had grown and developed. He could not stand it any longer and ran to where Asia was and gave her a big hug. Asia, feeling that someone was hugging her, wanted to get away, but when she felt a reassuring aura and seeing that brown hair that she would never forget, she reciprocated the hug. They were like that for a while longer when they separated. Issei, I'm glad you're okay. I was very worried when I found out what had happened to you. Asia, with tears in her eyes, again hugs Issei and with tears says, Asia, Issei, I'm so sorry I betrayed God and the church. I don't deserve help and even less from you. She kept crying on Issei's chest, regretting everything she had done, when suddenly Issei held Asia's hands. Issei, Asia, I don't care what you've done, I don't care what sins you've committed, I don't care what penance you have, because I will always be by your side. You are a very important person to me. At that moment Issei hugs Asia, giving her a big hug. Asia, Issei missed you so much. Issei, I miss you too, Asia. Hey Asia, since you're here I can take you to meet Kuo. On that day Issei took Asia to see the whole city, and Asia took her to all the pretty players, took her to eat, to the movies, to the park for ice cream, and even the mechanical games where she won a stuffed animal when and while on the date Issei told her everything that had happened to him after they had separated. Telling her that he was the new Sekiyutai and all his titles granted by the church, and how he was involved in the alliance of the three factions, and what was his position in heaven and the church. He also had to tell her some bad news, that God was dead. She took that very badly, but what did upset her was that he told her that he already had a partner who was Zenobia. That had made the blonde girl angry, but instead of getting depressed she had said that she would fight for her love and that she would not give up and that she had the upper hand because she was with him, and she was not. All that had happened during the day. At this moment they were going to Issei's house so that Asia could settle in his room, when suddenly the sky began to turn purple. A laugh was heard. Rainar, ha ha, so where were you, little nun? It seems you got yourself a boyfriend, ha ha ha. Then he started making fun of Asia, but he stopped making fun of her when he saw the boy who was with her. I will, Rain, what are you doing here, and what are you doing with her, damn it? Issei, it seems that the demons did not finish you off. I think I will have to do it myself. At that moment Issei got into a fighting stance, and when he was going to take out his sword to finish off the fallen angel, but before taking it out he felt someone behind him, and when he turned around he saw a white-haired guy in a father's habit holding a sword of light attacking him, but Issei was able to dodge that cut, but that guy did not stop attacking and did not give Issei time to summon his sword or the booster gear when he heard a scream that was from Asia, who was being taken by Rainar, who was pulling her so she could take her away, but Issei could not see anymore because that guy had made a cut in her stomach. That Issei knelt down in pain, seeing that Asia let go of Rainar and ran to where Issei was. Asia, please leave Issei alone, I will go with you, just leave Issei alone. Asia, let's see what Reina said, nodded her head. She went to where Issei was kneeling. She began to heal Issei. He wanted to stand up to continue fighting, but Asia stopped him. Asia, please Issei, don't fight anymore, you've done a lot for me, you know Issei, today was the best day of my life and I thank you for that. At that moment they hit Issei in the head and he faints, but he still hears how they pulled Asia and the voices as they disappeared into the dark unconsciousness. After a while Issei wakes up and without thinking he runs to his house, runs in, goes up to his room and begins to change quickly. While Issei was changing, Drake gets out of the booster gear. Drake, what are you thinking about, mate? Issei, we will go through Asia and bring justice to those sinners. In the abandoned church of Kuo, where he is performing the ritual to remove the secret gear from Asia, where Rainar knew that Issei would not stay with his hands crossed and would come for the nun. Which is why he had moved all his subordinates around the church, sending Caligarner and Middle behind the church with a group of priests, and at the main entrance were Dones and Fred at the entrance, and already inside the church there were several priests to stop him when Rainar was going to start the ritual, when an explosion was heard behind the church at that moment, and Issei was finishing off the group of renegade priests who were under the orders of the fallen angels. When the last priest fell to the ground, Issei turned his attention to the two fallen angels who were far away watching as Issei finished off the priests. Caligarner, apparently those useless people were of no use. Middle, I think we'll have to finish it ourselves. At that moment the two girls take out a pair of black wings and create spears of light in their hands and throw them at Issei. He easily destroys them with his sword. But at that moment the fallen angels were already on top of Issei, attacking the purple-haired girl, who starts a fist fight, while the other blonde girl creates spears and throws them at Issei when he has an opening in his defense, but none of the girl's blows hit Issei. Issei, they are good for being low-class fallen angels, but I am at a higher level. Caligarner, shut up, you damn. At that moment the purple-haired girl raised her leg wanting to give an upward blow, but Issei dodged it with ease and kicked her in the stomach, which made her fly away and crash into some trees that surrounded the church. At that moment a spear of light tried to hit Issei, but only a swing of her sword destroyed that spear, and Issei fixed his gaze on the little blonde-haired girl in a gothic lowly version who had an angry face. Middle, how are you so strong? At that moment Middle created several spears of light around him and threw them at Issei. Issei, I think we have to end this. Then Issei concentrated a little energy in his sword and launched a wave of sacred magic that destroyed Middle's spears and her in his path, and only heard how a body fell to the ground and only saw the Caligarnet scene as Issei approached her where she had crashed. Caligarnet, you are a monster, who are you, damn? Issei, so I'm the monster. I'm the person who wants to kill an innocent and pure girl who just put on a secret gear. That seems worse to me. You guys are the monsters, but I'll be your nightmare. At that moment Issei raises his sword, and the last thing Caligarnet saw was that sword. Issei, I'm done here. But at that moment a short subject with a black trench coat. Donison, you did this damn thing. Issei, yes, I had to eliminate these vermin, but it seems I forgot one. At that moment Donison threw himself at Issei with spears of light in each hand and attacked with great fury. But Issei only blocked with his sword, but in a quick movement Issei made the head of that angel fly and fall to the ground. At that moment Issei continued his way to the church, and inside it Reincar was in the middle of the ritual when suddenly Fred entered. Fred, it's time to go, that crazy guy is coming closer. When suddenly there were bangs and explosions. When the noise came, a silence was heard in the room. When suddenly the door of the room flew towards Fred, but he jumped to the side to avoid it, and where the door was Issei. I will reign. How is it possible that you are so strong? Damn you! I will kill you even if it costs me my life. Fred, how did I not see from the beginning those clothes, the sword, and that damn way of fighting? You are him. You are the Red Butcher, that exorcist who has the power of a dragon, or so they told me. At that moment Reincar is surprised by what Fred said. At that moment Fred takes out his guns. Fred, you're going to be a great addition to my repertoire. Issei's thoughts. Apparently the church has not said anything about me being the Sekiyuti or that I am the step-bearer. But his thoughts were interrupted by a spear of light that was thrown by Reincar, but when he jumped to dodge it, Fred took the opportunity to shoot bullets of light at him that Issei destroyed with his sword in the air. When he fell to the ground he continued attacking him with spears of light when suddenly Fred attacked him with a sword of light. And a sword fight began with attacks from both sides, but they were blocked when a clash of them made them retreat. Fred, you're not doing so badly, you're a pest, but you're nothing compared to me. At that moment Fred took out a second lightsaber. Issei, you're right, I can't compare myself to you because I'm better. At that moment Issei summons a winged magic circle next to him, and takes out a step. Fred, that sword is one of the 3 legendary swords, made by goddamn stupid. How did you get that sword? Issei, I think it's none of your business, especially when you're going to be dead soon. I will reign. Never mind, Fred, there are 2 of us. We can kill him and take that sword from him. At that moment Reincar created more sacred spears and threw them at Issei, but with a single step cut he destroyed the spears. Issei, it's the best they have. At that moment a burst of bullets were directed at Issei by Fred, who dodged them by jumping and then running to where Fred was to run him through with his sword, but Fred took out a sword of light that with it he was able to block that attack, but the force of Issei's sword was greater than it made Fred's sword of light break, but before that it cut the white-haired man in 2, but Reincar tackled Issei to save Fred's life, and she and Issei crashed into a wall, and when they got up from the rubble she saw how Fred left, leaving Reincar alone. I will reign, don't run, coward. At that moment she took out her wings to fly and escape, but something was holding her, and it was Issei's hand that had her held by her ankle, but it didn't last long because he threw her into the rubble from their impact. But when the dust cleared it wasn't Reincar but Yuma, her alter ego. Yuma, Issei, I love you, don't you want to have another date tomorrow, Issei? She said it with tears in her eyes and with a charming face, but Issei only saw her with a face of contempt. Issei, that under the fallen one I will reign. At that moment Issei creates a spear of light, and the tattoo he had begins to shine. Reincar, how can you use it? But she couldn't finish her sentence because Issei hit her with his spear, causing her to disintegrate from so much power. After that, Issei approached where Asia was tied to a cross, untied her, and left the church, but when they left, the Citri and Gremory clans were there with their respective leaders. Rias, as the protector of this city, I order you to surrender and give us the girl. Sona, from what you've told me, you can't talk to him. I think the most logical thing to do is to finish him off right now. At that moment everyone was on guard and with intentions of killing the chestnut tree. Issei, are you sure what he's going to do? You would say if you are a stranger to us who only causes problems, and has made us get to this point. Issei, I think you're right, but you're still many years away from being able to fight me. At that very moment, Issei summoned the booster gear wings and suddenly jumped and took flight, leaving everyone perplexed by his tremendous speed. Issei arrived home and left Asia to rest in the guest room, and when he left, Drake was at the door. Drake, so what are you going to do with the sisters of the Demon Kings? Issei, I'll have to make a few calls to be able to fix this. The next day Asia woke up, and when she got up she realized that she was not dead and that she was in a strange place. She left the room and heard noises on the ground floor, where some noises were heard going down the stairs and approaching the place that appeared was the kitchen, and when she entered she saw an Issei cooking and a small red dragon in a baby chair that wanted its breakfast. But when Issei and Drake noticed the blonde Issei approached her, and seeing that, Asia ran and hugged Issei. That did not last long because the food that the brown-haired boy was making was starting to burn. At that moment Asia ran and began to cook and fix Issei's mess. After that they all had breakfast together, and while Issei told Asia what had happened last night, and introduced Drake the Red Dragon, or Sekiyutai, just like Drake introduced himself, and at the end of that Issei told Asia that he had arranged for her to stay with him and Edmas could attend the school where Issei studies. At that moment Issei takes out a gift bag and gives it to Asia, and when she opens it she sees that it was the Kuo school uniform. At that moment Asia hugs Issei and gives him a kiss on the cheek that makes the brown-haired boy blush. Asia thanks Issei for everything you do for me, and I would like another favor, Issei. Issei, and what is Asia? Asia, never leave me. At that moment Asia gave Issei a kiss on the lips that lasted a while until Drake spoke. Drake, I don't want to cut the moment short, but if you don't hurry up, you'll be late for school. After that they both end their kiss and Asia ran to change to go to school, leaving and Issei all red. Drake, ha ha ha, how does it feel for Issei to kiss a girl after a long time? Issei, ha ha ha, very good, and more if it is from a girl that I like. Giving a sigh, after a while Asia comes down in the academy uniform. Asia, and how I look, Issei? Issei, you look beautiful, Asia. Drake, yes, you better go now before he starts playing really hard. At that moment Issei takes Asia's hand and takes her, saying goodbye to Drake while Asia does the same. Drake, seeing that he had left, well, I think I'll start playing, and after that closing the door. Chapter 15, Phoenix. At this moment Issei was arriving at school with Asia, and while they were arriving everyone looked at Issei with jealousy for bringing a beautiful girl to his side, and everyone thought how he had managed to meet that girl with European features. But at the same time that Issei and Asia arrived at school, in the window of the student council she was standing laughing, watching them arrive at school, and when she turned around and went to her friend who was reviewing some papers on her desk. Rias, Sona, could you repeat to me how Issei was able to enroll that girl so quickly and save himself from the disaster he caused in the church and those fallen angels? Sona, well, yesterday after the incident at the church, I reported it to my sister, and she only told me that they would talk to him and that if he could admit a new student to the school, and from then on she didn't tell me anything else about him. What did your brother tell you? You would say that he would talk to me today and tell me why he is here. Sona, I see. I think that someone who can cause that disaster is not just anyone, and more so someone who has contact with the Demon Kings. Apparently he is someone to be feared. That left the redhead thinking about that boy, but the one who was having a bad time was Issei, because when he arrived at the classroom he was greeted by his two friends Matsuda and Motohama, who wanted to hit him because he had betrayed them, wanting to beat him up, but Issei didn't let him. But at that moment Asia arrived next to where the tugs were. Asia, why do they want to hit Issei if he is a very kind person? At that moment the classroom fell silent, looking with strange faces at Issei when screams were heard, and the girls in the classroom pulled Asia to a corner and told her what Issei was like and if he had done something to the girl, and on the other hand all the boys cornered Issei to hit him for having soiled the mind of a young and beautiful girl with his perverted things. But everything was cleared up when Asia told them that she was a childhood friend of Issei and that she had met him in Italy when Issei was passing through and visiting, and that they had become very good friends, and now that she wanted to know Japan, and that Issei had helped her come and give her lodging in his house. And in writing her in this school, several girls liked Asia's story, and even some had seen the brown-haired boy with new eyes, but the men did not see it that way, and they got angry more because Issei was living with a beautiful girl in his house, and that day Issei was hated by all the men in the school. At the end of class Issei was beaten all over the classroom, and when he left Asia healed him behind some classrooms and he saw her apologizing for causing a lot of problems to the brunette. But Issei only told him that this always happened but with angry women. But when she heard that, Asia got angry and pinched Issei. Issei-san, you shouldn't be perverted, that's bad, and more so since you are a guard of heaven, that's not a good example. What would the seraphims say if they saw you like this? Issei, ha ha ha, well surely Michael and Raphael wouldn't say anything, and Gabriel would pray for my sinful soul, and Uriel would think why God would create such a person with such great lust. At that moment Asia, a little red, says to Issei, Asia, if you can't control yourself, Issei, you should tell me so I can calm that lust you have and thus be able to do something for you. At that moment Asia would take Issei's hand and bring it to her chest, and with a big blush she would see Issei. Issei seeing that, and feeling Asia's chest, he would quickly remove his hand. Issei, Asia, don't do that. Asia with a sad face looked on as Issei removed his hand. Issei, it's not that, it's just that I'm at an age where I get very crazy when I see a pretty girl, and more so because I have a sealed dragon. That makes it worse for me. Asia with a pout looks at Issei to see how he had deflected the question she had asked him. At that moment Issei takes Asia's hand and holds her very tightly, and takes her to the occult building. Issei, let's go. Asia, you have to make one more stop along the way, I'll explain it to you in more detail. Issei said that to Asia with a smile, and Asia smiled back. Upon arriving at the occult building, there were two groups of demons, the Gremry and the Citri, and at the door were Issei and Asia, but no one spoke until Issei broke the silence. Issei, well, I think we have to clarify this, right? Rias, I think you owe me an explanation, isn't it? Issei, haha, I think so. At that moment Issei put on a more serious face. Issei, I think I have not introduced myself well. Well, I am Issei Hudo. I am the current Sekiyuti and bearer of a sacred gear and bearer of the sacred sword step and one of the strongest exorcists of the church and of heaven. Upon hearing this, everyone was left speechless at the revelation, but the only one who looked normal was the leader of the Citri Sona clan. Sona, I think it was the most logical thing to do, seeing the way the demon kings treated you, and all that power could only be from a very important person, and surely being a very important person in the church, there is surely a peace treaty between the demons and heaven, isn't that true? Issei, if it's true it sounds good in part. I didn't expect less from one of the best young strategists in the demonic world. Rias, but that can't take away all the work you've made us go through with the church problem. At that moment Asia takes a step forward. Asia, you are right, Miss Rias, that is why I offer you. But at that moment Issei puts his hand in front of Asia. Issei, you're right, Rias. That's why I made a deal with the Demon King Surzex that I would take responsibility for my actions. That's why I will do a favor to the heiresses that I have caused so many problems, and I will also help them with the supernatural problems when you can't. Asia, Issei, you shouldn't do that. Issei, no, Asia, you are a very important person to me and I will never leave you alone again. At that moment Issei takes Asia's hand and looks at her with a comfortable face, and then Asia returns the gesture, and then Issei turned around and looked at the heiresses. Issei, then what are you going to do with your requests? Rias and Sona looked at each other very seriously, and while they were thinking about it, the first one to speak was Sona. Sona, well, knowing that you and your girlfriend will not join our entourage, the only thing I need from you is that if you could train my pawn Saji Gensuru, since he has one of the Vitra pieces, it would be a good training with you. Issei, I think it seems fair to me. At that moment, a thin boy with blonde hair came out of Sona's entourage. Suddenly the boy leaned over. Saji, I'm so sorry for all the times I scolded you or called you out, master. Issei, ha ha ha, don't worry Saji, it's okay that you did that, it's your job and that of a teacher, better just tell me, Issei. At that moment Issei extended his hand to Saji and he accepted it, holding out his own handshake, but when he finished, Issei turned to Rias. Issei, so what else do you want to ask for? Rias, well, I know you won't join my entourage, but I would like you to help me with a very personal problem, which I will tell you about another time. Issei, okay, how about I summon Kiba at night and you come with him, and we talk about your problem? Rias, okay, then we'll talk tonight. Issei, well, I think it's over. I have to go. After the brief meeting with the devils and a trip to a store, Issei and Asia were back at their house where Issei told Drake about the meeting and how it turned out while Asia made the food. Already at night, Issei summoned Kiba, and as agreed with him, Rias came. Issei had summoned them in the living room to be able to talk about what Rias wanted. Already being comfortable in Issei's living room, and Asia had prepared some snacks for the talk. Issei, so what will be your request, Rias? But before Rias could speak, Drake flew from the second floor and landed on the table where the snacks were and began to eat without saying anything. Issei, don't take it too seriously. Rias, well, it's a delicate thing I'm going to ask you, but I would be very grateful. Issei, that is very important. Rias, well, I want to break my engagement with a high-class devil. Issei, and you can't break it yourself. Rias, well, it's not easy saying it or doing it, since my parents agreed to my engagement with the Phoenix family, and since I wanted to prevent it, they didn't want to, and the only way is to prove that the heir of the Phoenix family is not suitable for a pact between clans. Issei, and why don't you tell your brother he is one of the demon kings? Rias, if you're right but the demon kings can't intervene in the problems of the demon clans, then are you going to help me or what? Issei, well, if it's so complicated that not even a demon king can do anything, what can I do? Rias, well, my plan is to challenge the heir of the Phoenix clan in a rating game to prove that he does not have enough power to marry me, and that is why I would like you and Asia to join my entourage temporarily. Issei, I don't think that will cause me many problems with the higher-ups in heaven. They told me very clearly not to get involved in demon affairs. Drake, I don't think there's any problem. You're here as an ambassador of heaven, remember? Issei, ha 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 ha, yes it is true, I had forgotten. Drake, typical of you evading responsibilities. Rias, Issei, I think you haven't introduced me to your pet dragon. Drake, ha 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 ha, I never chew on him. Issei, I'm sorry about that. Let me introduce you to Yes Drake. He is the red celestial dragon of destruction and my partner on the battlefield. Rias, either nice to meet you Drake, or would you like me to tell you Sekiyurai? Drake, no Drake, it's okay, the current Sekiyurai is Issei, I'm just the old one, I just limit myself to helping Issei. Rias, and then Drake, what do you say about the proposal I make to Issei? Drake, well the truth is, my friend, it's time for you to introduce yourself to the other factions and show our power to the supernatural world. Issei, well I think you're right Drake. Well okay, Rias accepts your proposal. At that moment Rias jumps with excitement, getting up from the chair. Rias, well Issei, then I tell you that in 2 days my Razor, the heir of the Phoenix family, arrives. Issei, as soon as possible. Rias, yeah, well Issei, I have to go. See you in 2 days. If you want, you can come to the club and say hello or join if you like, of course. At that moment Rias took her things and left without saying goodbye or anything, leaving everyone surprised, even Kiba who was accompanying her. At the end of all this, the only thing Issei could say. Issei, so Kiba, do we play or not? Kiba, good. Drake, well I'll have to show them who the king of games is. And that night was a night of boys playing video games and Asia watching how they played. There were even moments that they made Asia play. And the 2 days that Rias had said passed, and in those days the hatred of the men of the school grew more because the girls of the occult club and those of the student council spoke with respect to Issei, and that made the men angrier, and created more rumors that the pervert had already done things to all the girls. But the good thing is that Asia had made a friend, Kiryu, who had become a great friend of her as well as Issei, since she had approached because of the rumors about them, but she had realized that it was false for the moment, since she saw how the 2 boys looked. But at this moment Asia and Issei were going with Sona and her queen to the occult club, since the heir of the Phoenix family was coming. But before entering the room, screams were heard from the other side, and Rias was entering, arguing with a tall man with white skin and blonde hair with a perverted face, looking at her breasts to Rias. Razor, come on Rias, you're going to be my, please let me touch those breasts. Rias, get away from me Razor, you're just trash that sees me as a trophy. Razor, that's not true, I also want you to have strong children. Rias, you are a bastard. At that moment Rias throws a burst of power of destruction at him, but a voice calms everything, and it was from that May of the secret meeting of the Graphia factions. Writing silence the 2 that the guests have arrived. At that moment they see Sona and her queen accompanied by Issei and Asia, and seeing that Rias runs behind Issei, protecting herself from Razor. Razor, you think that weakling is going to protect you? It is better that you do not believe that young Issei is a nobody, and it is better that we sit down to talk about your engagement. At that moment Razor and Rias sat facing each other, and behind Rias was all her nobility, and on Razor's side there was no one, and in the middle was Gabriel standing, and in a corner was Issei and Asia watching everything. Razor, so we're going to set the wedding date, the guests and all that, right? Rias, no Razor, I already told you that I will not marry you, we are here to break my engagement with you. Razor, and how will you do that, my dear Rias? Rias, well, with a rating game duel to show that you don't have the power to unite two demonic families. Razor, haha, you beat me in a rating game. Rias, well, I'm going to show you that a newbie like me can beat you, Razor. Razor, don't make me laugh, Rias, I'm one of the best players in the underworld, and you don't even have half of your nobility, while I. At that moment, from a magic circle full of flames, a group of girls came out of it with different outfits. Razor, I have all my complete nobility, and they are also my harem. At that moment a voluptuous girl approached Razor, and at that moment he kissed her with great passion, while caressing her breasts. Rias looked at Razor with contempt and disgust and with a lot of hatred, but there was a bigger lament, and it was from Issei, who was crying with rage. But one of the girls saw Issei, and it was Ravel Phoenix. Ravel, what's wrong with that beach boy? Akeno, he's probably angry because he's a pervert, and he's jealous of Razor, foo foo foo. Akeno said that with her palm on her mouth and a small smile, while Ravel looked at him with an unpleasant face. Razor, don't pay attention to him, sister, he's just jealous for something he'll never have. Hearing that, Issei screams angrily. Issei, she's your bucking incestuous sister. Razor, I would never do that, she is my sister, and I only have her in my nobility to take care of her idiot. Issei, well, I thought I had broken those limits. Razor, don't be an idiot, but what were we talking about, Rias? Rias, that you are going to lose in the rating game. Razor, if that's true, well, you're going to lose, you don't have your full nobility, ha ha ha. But at that moment the white-haired May speaks. Graphia, then let's give an option for things to be equal, that the young Issei and the girl Asia integrate to complete the nobility of Miss Rias temporarily. At that moment Razor saw Issei with obvious rage and Asia, who looked at her with lustful eyes. Razor, okay, but with one condition, that if Rias loses I will not only take her but the blonde girl as well. While saying that, he approached Asia very haughtily, but Issei stood between them. Issei, Asia is not in the damn deal. Razor, well then there is no game. Asia, it was okay, Issei. I know you won't lose against that kind of despicable person. Razor, well, the girl has spoken, well, everything has been said, I'll go, well, you laugh, the game will be in 5 days because I can't wait any longer to make you and that blonde girl mine, well, see you, darling. He said all this while he joined his nobility, and they left in a magic circle with a sarcastic face. When Razor Rias left, he began to insult him and curse him for giving them so little time. Rias, that bastard wants to speed up everything that waxes he plans. Issei, don't worry, Rias. Whatever he's thinking won't help him against us. Rias, then let's train to ensure victory, no, Issei. Issei, sure, Rias, but I'll have to take Saji to start his training. Rias, yes, it's okay, and maybe you even have a new student. Issei, what are you planning, Rias? Rias, you'll see, Issei, it will be a surprise. And she said it with a playful face, and only Issei saw her with doubtful eyes, but he let it go. The next day Issei and Asia and everyone from the occult club, with Saji included, were going to a house in the mountains that belonged to the Rias family to train. Everything was normal on the trip, the only thing was that Kiba carried a coffin on his shoulders. When I approached to ask him, he told me that he was his partner, and did not say anything else because Rias interrupted when they talked and took Issei away from him to talk about strategies for the duel against Razor. But everything was resolved when they arrived at the house in the mountains of Rias, when Kiba dropped the coffin to the ground and a moan was heard. Issei, Rias, I think it's time for you to tell me what you have in that coffin and not beat around the bush. Rias, well, Issei, I think it's time for you to meet the last member of my peerage. Rias, Issei, I present to you Jasper. He is my bishop and a Jikikomori and a half vampire and half human, and I would like you to train him with Saji. Issei, oh, I didn't know there was a blonde girl in your peerage, Rias. Kiba, ha, Jasper is a man. Asia, how nice it is to be a man, aa. Saji, I never thought Miss Rias's subjects were so unique. Issei, and what's so special about this boy or girl or whatever? Rias has a sacred gear that can stop time. At that moment, Drake comes out of Issei's glove and approaches Jasper and begins to look at him in detail, and suddenly, from a magic circle, he takes out his golden tablet and a scanner comes out of it and scans the little vampire. Drake, no Rias, you don't have a sacred gear here, you have a Longinus without developing its power. It is not exposed because the boy has not generated enough power to awaken it. Rias, and how do you know that, Drake-san? Issei, because he has his magic tablet that can do everything. I said that with envy? Drake, are you jealous, mate, that I have the power of heaven in my hands and you don't? Issei, you have a lot of power in that tablet, and you only use it to play lazy dragon. Drake, surely you will use it to spy on all the girls in the world, no? Issei wanted to refute, but nothing came to his mind. Drake, that's what I thought, but well, that boy needs a good training and then we can see what Longinus has. After that, Issei introduced Drake to everyone, and everyone upon finding out was surprised to know who he was, and after so many revelations the training began. Asia and Akeno began to train their magic and improve it, while Rias began to study strategies for the duel, while the others began to do physical training more to Saji and Jasper, who were not in shape, but Issei. Kiba and Kaneko supported them, and after that a few confrontations between them, and in a tree playing with the tablet is Drake, watching how everyone trained in their own way, so that in the end everyone was exhausted except Issei, who was carrying Saji, Jasper and Kaneko, and behind them a beaten Kiba. When they arrived at the house, Rias was scared of the conditions everyone was in so much that she asked Asia to please heal them, and so the 5 days passed full of training until the day of the confrontation arrived that was going to do in an artificial dimensional space that had been adapted for the confrontation. That was the school of Kuo. The game consists of defeating the opposing king, for which Razor and his nobility were in the student council, while Rias's team is in the occult club, for which we only had to defeat Razor when being transported. We were all dressed in the uniform. When arriving at the artificial space, Rias had no longer given her instructions, so we all followed them. Kiba had to stay in the club to attack anyone who approached, while Akeno and Kaneko went through the gym and destroy it so that no one would pass, while Rias with Asia and Jasper sneaked into the school to find Razor to attack him by surprise, while Issei attacked from the front, serving as fat. At this moment, Issei was above the occult club on the roof looking where the student council was. Suddenly summoned the booster gear, and in his hand he accumulated a large amount of power, and pointing at the building only that great power, while the voice of booster gear explosion destroying a part of the building, but no voice was heard declaring victory, for which no one he had been injured. But Rias had already planned that. At that moment Issei went down the building and ran to school. Meanwhile Akeno and Kaneko had found 3 pawns and a razor tower. Meanwhile the remaining pawns had infiltrated the occult club but had met Kiba. Kiba, I'm sorry, but my mistress is not here. And at that moment Kiba created a sword and started to fight, while lightning bolts came out of the gym and loud bangs were heard. But when Issei arrived in front of the school, he found Ravel, Razor's sister, in front of him. Ravel, I knew you were a strong person, but not that strong. The good thing is that I have a countermeasure against you. Issei, so what is it? Ravel, well, you'll see. Carlamine, Cheeries would do me a favor. At that moment the 2 Razor Knights would jump out of some bushes and attacked Issei with their swords. Seeing that, Issei summons his step sword and started a sword battle. Issei did not look so pressured by the 2 knights. The 2 were very coupled in their attacks, slashing left and right, but Issei blocked them all. But it got more complicated when they activated their demonic power and unified it with their swords, giving them more speed when the 2 hit the brown-haired boy. But that did not change anything when Issei matched their power, giving battle to the knights, while far away from the battle is Ravel, very far from them, watching the confrontation. When Issei got tired of them and imbuing his sword with light created a great cut that wounded the knights, leaving them on the ground, touching the wound that hurt from using sacred magic, while Ravel watched it in astonishment. Ravel, who are you and why do you have sacred magic? Issei, no, you had it all planned. At that moment Issei stabs the 2 knights, causing them to disappear into particles. After that Graphia's voice was heard. Graphic, 2 Phoenix Razor horses have retired. Issei, well then what are you going to do, little girl? Issei got closer and closer to Ravel. When he was 1 meter away from her, a magic circle was activated and Issei couldn't move anymore. Ravel, you're a fool. I knew from the beginning that you were the biggest problem. You have a very strange aura, which is why they created this magic circle of shared paralysis. Neither of you will be able to move until the game is over. Issei with a surprised face looks in amazement at Ravel. Issei, you are very clever, but I am not the only one who has power here. At that moment Graphia's voice was heard again. Graph 8 pawns and a rook of Phoenix Razor have been removed. Ravel, but what? Issei, your mistake was thinking that I was the only one who had enough power to defeat your brother, but there are people with the same, or more talent in this demonic clan. At that moment Ravel pouted like a little girl, while Issei gave her a smile. Issei, and then you are Razor's sister. On the other side of the battlefield everyone else ran to the school to support their queen while Rias arrived where the school's middle Razor was. Razor Rias, you surprised me. I never thought your lackeys were so strong, but your luck has run out. At that moment a ball of flames appeared in Razor's hands, and he threw it at Rias. Rias, I'm not as weak as you think, Razor. And a sphere of power of destruction appeared in Rias's hand, and she threw it at Razor, and when the two masses of power collided it created a great explosion. Meanwhile, when Akeno and Kaneko were arriving at the school and saw the fierce battle that was taking place inside, they accelerated their pace, but an explosion stopped them, and in front of the two is the Queen of Razor and her last tower. Yubaluna, if you want to help your master you will have to go through me and my partner. Akeno with pleasure Afafufu. At that moment the two queens took flight and a magic duel began with fierce lightning spells and large explosions, while on the ground the two towers began a hand-to-hand duel with a boxing style, giving strong blows to each other. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kiba was facing the other Razor Bishop who had the ability to control flames, giving Kiba trouble getting close to her because of the flames she created. While inside the school Rias and Razor were fighting with fierce attacks destroying the entire place, but it looked evenly matched. But it was not like that. Rias did have several burns while Razor did not have any hits due to her Phoenix regeneration, but the good thing was that Asia was close to her, that she healed her when she was injured, but even then Rias was no match for Razor and had cornered her and created a large sphere of flames on her. Razor, give up Rias and accept your destiny as my future wife. Rias, I will never accept it. At that moment Asia takes out a bottle with a red liquid and gives it to Jasper, who was in a corner trembling with fear. Asia approaches him. Asia, take this, Jasper. This liquid will make you stronger, and you can help Rias in her fight. Jasper, I can't. I'm too weak to help the president. I can't. Asia, if you can, Jasper, you just have to trust yourself. At that moment Asia uncovered the tube, and when it was open the smell of Issei's blood left Jasper with his mouth open, and at that moment Asia took advantage so that Jasper would take it at that same moment, when Razor was going to hit Rias, but he was paralyzed because Jasper was approaching him with a great demonic and dark aura grabbing him. Jasper, leave the president alone, causing a darkness to swallow Razor, but at that same moment Rias stood in front of Razor. Rias, I told you, Razor, not to underestimate me. At that moment Rias created a sphere of power of destruction that little by little was concentrating it with raw power, while Razor and Razor tried to get away from the darkness by making their flames burn, but that couldn't do anything when Rias already had her attack ready and launched it at point-blank range at Razor and leaving a huge explosion, and a voice was heard. Graphic King Razor Phoenix has been retired. The winner is Ria Gremory. Everyone who was fighting was amazed by the warning given by the voice, and the members of Rias nobility began to celebrate, while Issei was talking to Ravel about trivial matters when he heard Graphia's voice. Ravel, how could it be that my brother lost? Issei, the truth is that your brother was very strong and his nobility was first class, but his problem was underestimating us, but it's normal, he knew almost nothing about us. At that moment a flame came out of Issei's finger and fell on the ground as if it were a drop, and as it fell it began to burn Ravel's magic trap. When destroying the trap, Ravel fell to her knees. Ravel, you could have escaped whenever you wanted and you didn't because Issei, I didn't know how to do it, but I really enjoyed talking to you. At that moment Issei flew away, leaving an angry Ravel blushing at that boy. In the end, Rias was able to annul her marriage, and Issei was able to be even with her, and from there, days and weeks passed, and Issei continued training Saji and Jasper, and from time to time he went to the occult club to distract himself a bit, and because Asia had become good friends with the girls, but at the same time Issei went to have a good time with his friend Kiba, but what he didn't know was that two people were going to arrive that would change all that peace that Issei had at this moment. Chapter 16, An Unexpected Reunion. It was a wonderful day, the weather was perfect, and Issei accompanied by Asia were going to the occult club because Rias had called them for a problem. Upon arriving at the main room there was Rias and the student council president Sona Citri, the two heirs of demonic clans who had serious faces, and he arrived in front of them. Rias, we have summoned you here because we need your help, Issei. Sona, the problem is that there were some attacks on people from the church near Kuo, and it seems they are coming this way. Issei, but who is attacking these people? Sona, it's not confirmed, but it seems that Fred is the one who is killing them, but we still don't know exactly. Issei, and then what do you want me to do? Rias, since everything points to him approaching, we must have more surveillance in the city. Issei, if I remember correctly, he has a magic barrier to detect anyone who enters his territory. Sona, you're right, Issei, but we've had problems capturing supernatural beings. I know that the barrier is failing or that the beings have technology that surpasses ours. Issei, that makes sense. Rias, and you, Issei, how did you do it so that we couldn't detect you when you entered the magic barrier? With a swaggering face. Issei, well, as a Sekiyuti I have my secrets and my super cutting-edge technology. Sona, your sister got past the barrier by putting her aura on it so we couldn't detect it. At that moment, Issei's entire ego collapsed at the words of the black-haired girl. Issei, and how do you know that? Pointing at her with an angry and displeased face. Sona, well, my sister told me everything about you and your relationship with the church and the factions. Issei, with an angry face and in a low voice, Issei, that's Iskona. Sona, what did you say, Issei Hudo? Issei, your sister is very nice. Sona, that's what I thought, but speaking of other things, we should put guards of 2 or 3 people doing rounds in the city. Rias, yes, I think it would be the most convenient. How about Issei taking the first shift on guard at night with Yuto? Sona, I think it's fine. I'll also send Saji to help them and train him a little. Issei, they didn't even ask me if I could do the first guard. Rias, since you haven't done anything these days, at least you could do this, Issei. Issei just made gestures and left grumbling and cursing while the two heiresses laughed at him angrily. But what Issei didn't know was that at that very moment Zenobia and Irina were arriving at the city at a bus terminal while Zenobia was looking at the big city and was only thinking about her beloved while Irina was unloading a large painting that had the image of a saint all badly done that she couldn't get off the bus. Zenobia, leave that, Irina, that has no value, understand that you were scammed. Irina, how do you have so little faith? Zenobia understands that this is a sacred piece and that it is unique in existence. While Irina was arguing with Zenobia, she pulled the painting so hard that it fell into a puddle of water nearby and all the paint was diluted, leaving a blank canvas and a sad Irina for her painting. Zenobia, it can't be with you, Irina. You spent all our blessings on that painting. Irina, with tears in her eyes, and now what are we going to do, Zenobia? Zenobia, let's say, what am I going to do with you? Irina, crying Zenobia. Zenobia, don't cry anymore, Irina. How about you go to the churches in the city and see if there is anyone there while I go with someone to ask for help? Irina, someone? It's not that you're going with that boyfriend you have, right? With a curious face. Zenobia, and what does it have if that is so? Irina, ha 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 ha. Oh, Zenobia, I don't know why you keep saying that you have a boyfriend if we all know in the church that that's a lie, ha 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 ha. She said this while hiding her laughter with her hand. Zenobia, it's not a lie and I'll prove it to you. While saying that, Zenobia created a communication circle with a strange mark. Zenobia, hi Drake, it's me. I've already arrived in the city, yes, well, I'm going there, well, Irina, I have to go. I'll look for you later. While saying that, she walked away from an Irina who was all irritated because her partner was leaving her. Irina, I'm going to show that Zenobia that I also have friends and I have things to do, but I don't remember where Issei lived. Maybe there I can find some clue as to why he disappeared. Maybe he came back here. Well, I'll have to find out. So and Irina going to remember her childhood in Kuo. While the day passed, and Issei and Asia left school and went to Issei's house to eat, and Asia went to the market to buy ingredients while Issei went ahead to his house to get everything ready for the night. When he got home, he went in and took off his shoes while talking to Drake. Issei, I'm here, Drake. Where are you? I have to tell you something that happened at school. Zenobia, welcome home, honey. How was school? While saying that, Zenobia approached Issei very flirtatiously until she was in front of him and hugged him while planting a kiss on him, while Issei was surprised until Zenobia's lips touched his, and upon feeling it he kissed her back with the same intensity, as Zenobia giving each other a very long kiss until they separated, but Zenobia did not let go of the hug until she leaned on Issei's chest, and with a few words of supplication. Zenobia, I miss you, Issei, I missed you so much, Issei. Until she burst into tears and sank deeper and deeper into Issei while Issei surrounded her with his arms, giving her a strong hug. Issei, don't worry Zenobia, we're together again, and this time I won't leave you. Zenobia raises her head towards Issei. Zenobia, you swear to me that you will not leave me anymore. Issei, I swear. Saying that, the two sealed that oath with another kiss. After the kiss, the two stood up hugging each other as they headed to the living room. Issei, and how did you know I was here? Zenobia, Drake told me. Issei, that damn lizard. Meanwhile, Irina was walking through the streets near where she and Issei lived while remembering all the beautiful moments she spent with Issei when they were little and playing. Irina, Issei, where will you be and what will you be doing? Meanwhile, Issei was giving a cup of hot chocolate to Zenobia while sitting next to her, and she took the opportunity to cuddle up with him, while Irina was walking to Issei's house until she met a blonde girl who was walking around there. Irina, hey friend, I have a question. Do you know a boy named Issei? Asia, are you looking for Issei-san? Irina, you know him, she said it with stars in her eyes. Asia, if I live with him, would you like me to take you with him? Irina, would you do that for me? Asia, sure, and you know Issei. Irina, or I forgot to tell you, I'm a childhood friend. I'm Irina Shido, nice to meet you. Asia, or I'm Asia Argentinian, nice to meet you. And they went talking to Issei's house. When they got to the house, Asia opened the house and upon entering, voices were heard in the living room. When she saw in the living room, she found an Issei hugging a blue-haired girl while the two of them were talking very happily. But Asia didn't like that scene and she entered the living room all angry, and upon seeing that, Irina followed her, and upon seeing the same scene she was surprised by the people who were hugging. Asia, screaming, Issei Hiro, who is this girl? Issei and Zenobia were surprised to see the blonde all angry. Issei, calm down Asia, let me explain. Getting up from the chair where they were hugging, wanting to calm Asia down, but she didn't calm down when Zenobia got up and approached Asia and shook her hand. Zenobia, hello, nice to meet you. I'm Zenobia, Issei's girlfriend. Leaving the blonde perplexed by what the girl had said, she just shook hands with Zenobia, who took her hands and gave Asia a big hug. Zenobia, thanks for taking care of Issei. When she gave the hug, she realized that behind Asia was Irina with a surprised face. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Then Issei looked at Irina and was surprised. Issei, Irina is you. Zenobia, you know her, Issei. Issei, yes, she is a childhood friend, and it was because of her that I was taken to Europe after the accident. But before he could answer, Irina approached Issei and slapped him so hard that he turned his face away when he was going to complain, but he felt Irina hug him and start to cry, and everyone worried about the orange-haired girl. Irina, where were you all this time? You're a fool, you don't know how much I worried when I found out you disappeared. I worried so much I didn't know what I would do without you. And Irina continued crying at Issei for a while until she calmed down, and Issei explained to her everything that had happened, and how through his trip and adventures he came to meet Zenobia, and how over time they became a couple. Asia understood him and realized that she did not know Issei enough, but Irina did not like the relationship between Issei and Zenobia and claimed that since she was Issei's childhood friend she would have the right to be Issei's first girlfriend, but Zenobia only reiterated that she was Issei's girlfriend and that was never going to change that. Just saying it made Irina angrier and angrier. Issei, since we solved the misunderstanding and any problem because they are in Japan. But when they were going to tell her, Irina and Zenobia's stomachs growled with hunger. Asia, how about you tell us about the meal? I'll prepare it. Zenobia, I'll help you, Asia. Irina, you know how to cook, Zenobia, with a surprised face. Zenobia, of course, a good girlfriend should know how to cook. That made Irina angry and she ran after Zenobia and Asia to show Zenobia who cooked better, leaving a happy Issei watching how the girls prepared the food. Issei, this is wonderful, I wouldn't change it for anything. Drake, it's not that big of a deal, they're just your females. Issei, Draying, where were you? Drake, ha 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 ha, I was watching how the cattle gathered around you, and how you managed to solve it. Issei, damn lizard, you brought Zenobia here, and you didn't tell me. Drake, jajajajajajaj. At that moment Issei wanted to strangle Drake, but the little dragon was very agile and did not let himself be caught until they were interrupted by Asia, who told them that the food was ready and they went to eat, and so Issei introduced Drake to the duo of exorcists between the food. Irina and Zenobia told them that they were here to recover the Excalibur from a rebel priest who turned out to be Valper Galileo. Upon hearing that name, Issei got angry and broke the cutlery he had. That surprised everyone except Drake because he knew the hatred Issei had for the priest. Issei told them why he hated him so much, and then Issei told them that he would avenge his friends and kill that bastard. But before finishing, someone knocked on the door, and it was Kiba who came for him to watch over the city at night. Issei said goodbye to everyone and told Asia to explain to them what was happening, leaving everyone at his house. When leaving, Issei told Kiba about the news and that maybe that man comes with Fred, and talking they agreed on a plan to finish off that man to have to talk. And after Issei left Saji training, they separated to cover more ground. But when Issei is on the roof of a house looking around, when he felt someone coming, and looking to the side he saw Irina approaching him, jumping over the houses until she arrived where he was. Issei, what are you doing here, Irina? Irina, I got bored of being in the house and Zenobia took Asia with her, who was going to talk to her about dragons and something about their partners, but I wasn't interested and I preferred to come talk to you. Issei, yes, it would be better if you had gone far away from Zenobia until I spoke with Asia. Issei's thoughts, poor Asia, what is he saying to innocent Asia? Meanwhile at Issei's house, Zenobia was talking about the hexual characteristics of dragons, and how they affect their partners, while Asia wrote everything down in a notebook. Returning to Issei and Irina, they were sitting on a roof watching the stars while talking about everything they did as children. Irina, I remember that you were very restless and that you were very specific about what you wanted. Issei, ha ha ha, I don't think I've changed much from my thoughts from when I was little. Irina, ha ha, I think that even if you don't notice it, you are maturing, of course at your own pace, but you are maturing. Issei, ha 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 ha, you think? He said this while grabbing his head and laughing. Irina, Issei, do you remember when you said you wanted to do perverted things to me? She said that while blushing. Issei, blushing, thigh. Irina, what's wrong with you, Irina? Irina, it's just that when I found out that you and Zenobia are dating, I felt really bad seeing you together. Issei sees Irina and hugs her, but when he hugs her, Irina turns Issei over, leaving her on top of him. Irina, Issei, since Zenobia is your girlfriend and I am your childhood friend and I want and have the right to be your girlfriend. Issei, Irina, I don't know if you could maintain a calm relationship with Zenobia and me, and if you couldn't have a dreamlike relationship like any girl would want. Irina, the truth is that this relationship is very strange, but if you are with the person you love, you can bear anything, of course, only if the other person reciprocates your feelings. Issei, Irina, knowing that during this time many things have changed. I am not the child who came out of Kuo. During this time many things have changed, and maybe you only want the Issei from childhood and the current Issei is not to your liking. Irina, the truth is you are right, and during this time you have changed, but I feel inside me that the Issei that I know is you, and I don't care if you are bad or good, I will love you anyway. Issei, Irina, I don't know what to say. You are a person who supports me in everything, and because of that I will support you in any dream you have. Irina, well, my dream is to have a family and give strong warriors to heaven. That is my dream. And what is your dream, Issei? Issei, well, my dream is to have a harem. He said that while standing up and shouting it to the sky. Then Irina sees him with a very strange face but sighs and stands up and takes Issei's hands. Irina, then I will help you with that dream you have, Issei. At that moment Irina pounces on Issei, hugging him, and when he sees her he approaches her, and so does she until they kiss each other, sealing their love. Chapter 17, The Reunion and Union of a Love. The next day Issei was sleeping peacefully in his bed because the day before he had stayed up late watching the city, but suddenly Asia came in, all scared and desperate. Asia, Issei wakes up. Issei, Zenobia and Irina are not there, they left. Hearing that, Issei instantly lost sleep and got out of bed. Issei, how come they left? Asia, yes, I stopped to make breakfast and went to the rooms where you had given them to stay, and I wanted to see if they needed anything, but they weren't there. Issei, where could these two have gone? Issei was thinking about where the girls had gone, but his phone started to ring, and when he saw that it was ringing, he answered and heard what the student council president had to say to him. He hung up the phone and felt a little calmer, and told him, Asia. Issei, I know where the girls are, don't worry anymore. Asia, how good. He said it with his hands in the Amen position, while praying a prayer. Issei, how about we go have breakfast and go to school? Asia, clear, Issei. And so Issei and Asia went down to the kitchen to have breakfast, while at Kuo's school were Irina and Zenobia to talk to the demons that dominated that city. But at this moment they were in the occult club with Rias and Akeno, who were waiting for the clan leaders to meet. At that moment the door opened Sona and entered the room with her queen. Sona, I already contacted him, he says he will come soon. Rias, thanks Sona. Zenobia looked at them curiously and asked them something. Zenobia, excuse my intrusion, but who did they call? Sona, I called the third protector of this city, an ambassador of heaven in the city of Kuo. When they heard that, it seemed very strange to them, and they were a little doubtful because no one told them at the headquarters in Rome. No one told them that there was someone in the city who could support them. Zenobia, and who is that person? Our superiors didn't tell us anything about anyone in the city. Saying that, he stood up and pointed his Excalibur of destruction at the heirs of the demon clans. At the same time Irina did the same with her sacred sword, and seeing that they went on the defensive, creating magic circles in their hands, but at that moment next to them a magic circle of teleportation was created where Issei and Asia materialized from him. Seeing that, Zenobia and Irina were so surprised that they began to reproach Issei. Zenobia, what are you doing here, Issei? Issei, better tell me what you guys are doing here and why you left the house without saying anything. Irina, well, we don't want you to get into our urination and put yourself in danger, Issei. Zenobia, that's why we came to ask the demons for permission to be in their city and for a little help, since it also concerns them, since it is their territory. Irina, but the problem is that a blasphemer is proclaiming himself an ambassador of heaven, and that is a very serious crime. Issei, that person is me. Zenobia, Issei, you are the ambassador of heaven. Issei, I didn't tell them why I was in Kuo. Irina, to tell you the truth, you didn't tell us since you left, and we couldn't talk about it that night because the subject didn't come up that night, and we couldn't do anything. Hearing that, Zenobia got a little angry. Zenobia, how could you not do that at night? Issei, what did you do at night with Irina? Issei, it's not what you think, Zenobia, we just talked for a while. Irina, of course we only talked for a while, and only at that moment he confessed his love to me and said that I would be his only girlfriend and that he would leave you, Zenobia. Issei, that's not what we talked about, Irina. At that moment Zenobia raised her sword and pointed it at Issei's manhood. Zenobia, so what did you talk about, Issei? Issei, Zenobia, put down that sword. Zenobia, what did you talk about, Issei? Irina, come on darling, tell him what we talked about. Issei, that Irina declared herself to me and that I accepted her as my girlfriend, but I never said I would leave you. At that moment Zenobia looked at Irina in a contemptuous manner, and when she saw this she just turned away. At that moment Zenobia lowered her sword and calmed down. At that moment a voice was heard. Sona, then you could explain the situation to your concubines and stop wasting my time. At that moment Issei explained to Irina and Zenobia what was happening, how he was an ambassador from heaven and was here to make a peace treaty with the demons and angels and fallen angels, and they upon hearing that calmed down a bit and understood Issei's situation, and in the same way Issei explained to Rias, who was already familiar with Irina and Zenovia's mission and how it related to the problems that were approaching, and everything ended with a non-aggression pact of the exorcists to the demons of the clans and would support each other to achieve their goals. Upon leaving the occult club, Zenobia pulled Issei to the side away from Irina and Asia. Issei, what's wrong, Zenobia? Zenobia, what do you mean Irina is your girlfriend? Issei, it just happened last night and I couldn't refuse. Zenobia, okay, but don't you think it's time for you to ask someone else to be your girlfriend, since it seems like you're excluding them a lot? Issei, I know, but I can't find a way to tell you or the moment and everything about you. Zenobia, I talked to her last night, and she disagrees with your situation, and she just hopes you do something. At that moment Issei whispers something in Zenovia's ear and they return to where Asia and Irina are, and when they arrive Irina reproaches Zenovia. Irina, what were you and my darling talking about? Zenovia, that we have to go home to prepare food. At that moment Zenovia pulls Irina and drags her out of the school while Issei and Asia watch them leave. When Issei and Asia were walking to their classroom, Asia didn't say anything and had been quiet the whole time without saying anything with a sad face, but at that moment Issei takes her by the hand and says, Issei, I'm sorry Asia, I haven't been able to thank you for all that you do for me and maybe I've left you aside, but that will change from now on. And when Issei was going to confess to Asia, he hadn't realized that he had arrived at the classroom and that upon arriving, Ika came out to grab Asia and take her to who knows where, leaving Issei with words in his mouth. The day went by like any other normal class day, but at the end of the day, Issei and Asia headed home, but the atmosphere between them was very tense until Issei broke it. Issei, hey Asia, why don't you eat outside today? I'm sure the girls will have already finished the pantry from eating so much. Asia, ha ha ha, it's the safest. So that afternoon Issei and Asia ate at a ramen stand where they had a good time talking about everyday things, but everything went down the drain when Asia asked Issei a question. Asia, hey Issei, what am I to you? Hearing those words, Issei's mind paralyzed, but it was his heart that spoke. Issei brought her closer to Asia and took her hands. Issei, Asia, you are a very special person to me. You are the person who supports me in everything I do, and I know that in the last few days I have not given you the place you deserve, and for that reason. At that moment Issei stood up from where he was sitting and knelt down to Asia. Issei, Asia Argento, would you like to be my girlfriend? Asia, hearing those words and seeing what Issei was doing, just gave the brown-haired boy a smile. Asia, of course. Giving him a hug and a kiss on the lips that lasted for a few minutes until the air made them separate. After the kiss, the two of them were no longer hungry and left the ramen stand and walked through the streets of Kuo holding hands. But as they walked home, Asia asked a question that threw him off. Asia, Issei, have you ever had sex? Issei, hearing such words from the tender and adorable Asia, was scared but at the same time remembered what happened with Zenovia in the past, blushing. Issei, why do you ask that, Asia? Asia, with a very noticeable blush and playing with her fingers in a nervous way. Asia, Zenovia explained to me the meaning of the dragon-shaped tattoo she has. Issei, thoughts, Zenovia, why are you telling that to Asia? At that moment Asia hugged Issei and with a tender voice. Asia, I want to have one like that. Issei, Asia, if you know what that implies. Asia, yes I know, and I'm ready to be one with you, Issei. Lemon skipped. After a while Issei and Asia arrived at the house, and upon entering they heard noises in the living room, and when they saw what was happening it was that Zenovia and Irina in their underwear were watching a television series, and when they realized that Issei had returned Irina ran and hugged Issei. Irina, honey, you've returned. Issei, Irina, what are you doing in underwear? Irina, it's just that our combat suits are being washed, and we don't have any more clothes, so we prefer to walk like this. Issei, hey Asia, don't you think you have some clothes that you can lend them so they don't look like this? Issei said to Asia while looking away so as not to see an Irina in underwear. Zenovia, I thought having two cute half-naked girls in your house would be something that would make you happy. Zenovia said that as she approached Issei, but when she was close to Asia the magic circles on her chest began to shine. When they were close at that moment Zenovia reasoned and took Asia by the hand. Zenovia, don't tell me they did it. And a nervous and red Asia began to stutter. Asia, what are you talking about, Zenovia-san? Zenovia, so if they did it like it was. At that moment Zenovia pulls poor Asia to her room, leaving a slightly embarrassed Issei and a confused Irina. Chapter 18, Revenge. It was another great day in the city of Kuo, and in one of the many houses of this town a brown-haired boy was sleeping peacefully in his bed, but what he didn't know was that someone was watching him. When that person approached that defenseless young man in his bed at a hurried pace until he was in front of him, and at that moment a voice was heard in Issei's ear. Irina, Issei, wake up, Issei, come on, wake up, Issei, if you don't get up I'll have to do it to you. Issei, who was half asleep, thought that the voice was from his alarm clock with an anime girl's voice, but when he wanted to turn it off, he reached out to press the button, but when he did, a moan was heard. They would go aai. Hearing that, Issei opened his eyes and saw a blushing Irina, and seeing why he saw how he squeezed Irina's breasts, and a silence remained in the room while an Issei and a blushing Irina saw each other, but when Issei squeezed Irina again to know that it was not a dream. But he realized that it was not when the blushing Irina turned redder and screamed and at the same time slapped Issei that sent him flying out of bed. Irina, Issei, you are a pervert. Issei, composing himself from the tremendous slap, looked at Irina and complained. Issei, what are you doing in my room, Irina? Irina, well, your girlfriend told me to come wake you up, but all I get is one of your perversions. Issei, you didn't knock on the door and I put your voice and my alarm. Irina, are you okay? Issei, seeing the orange-haired boy, saw how he untied his hair, leaving it loose, giving him a scary appearance, and that ribbon that tied his hair was the sacred sword Excalibur, mimicked the one that can transform into anything, and Irina had transformed it into a stick, and with a look between blushing and anger. Irina, Issei, you are still a sinner. I will have to get that out of your being so you can be pure. At that moment Irina lunged at Issei, wanting to hit him with that stick, but Issei was able to dodge the first blows, but Irina increased her speed until Issei could not dodge anymore and ran out of his room, and behind him an angry Irina with a stick imbued with sacred power shouting sinner at Issei, who was going down the stairs and turning to enter. The kitchen collided with Zenobia, who was wearing only an apron and underwear, that when the two collided, dropping Issei on Zenovia's breasts, and when he wanted to stand up, Zenobia herself did not let him get up and on the contrary hugged him so that the brown-haired boy could feel more of her body. But when Irina went down and saw what Issei and Zenobia were doing, she got angrier and dropped her sword to Issei, who was being burned by a Zenobia, who upon seeing Irina tightened her grip, but everything was interrupted when a Rias Gremry opened the door to find her scene that was taking place, only left some documents that he brought, leaving them at the door, and slowly closed the door, and then was heard as he ran out. Taking advantage of the confusion, Issei and Zenobia stood up, but the blue-haired woman did not release her hold on Issei, and when Irina returned to her anger, she turned to see a Zenobia who was still hugging Issei, and who seemed like she was not going to let go, and at the same time she gave Irina a sharp look, wanting to tell her that the brown-haired boy was hers and that she was not going to let go, and seeing that Irina had no choice but to leave, muttering things about the blue-haired girl. Seeing that Irina was gone, Issei wanted to separate himself from Zenobia, but her grip did not give way until Issei looked at Zenobia, standing in front of her, the two of them looking at each other. Issei, Zenobia, could you let me go? Zenobia, not until you asked me nicely. Issei, could you please let me go? Zenobia-san. Zenobia, I'll let you go if you just give me a gift. At that moment Zenobia stopped hugging Issei's waist and wrapped her arms around Issei's neck, and with a flirtatious look she saw Issei, and seeing what she wanted, Issei did not hesitate to approach the blue-haired girl and plant a kiss on her, that when he felt those lips again Issei could not hold back any longer, and deepened that kiss with a passion that spilled out, reaching the point that the brown-haired boy wanted to stick his tongue into Zenobia, but when she felt it she separated from him, and with a very flushed face. Zenobia, no, Issei, that is sinning too much, we can't do it. Issei, why not? Love is not a sin. Giving Zenobia a look that he was serious, but she broke away from the hug. Zenobia, I think I'll go see Irina so she can come down for breakfast. But when she wanted to leave, Issei hugged her from behind, and when Zenobia turned around to tell him something, but she found the brown-haired man's lips giving her another kiss, that when he finished he said a few words in the blue-haired girl's ear that left her with a big blush and an embarrassment that she couldn't hide because of the words said by Issei. After that a trembling Zenobia went up the stairs in search of Irina. Issei, seeing that done, entered the kitchen to find Asia with a big pout on her face and with some crocodile tears. Seeing that, Issei only approached Asia, who like Zenobia was only dressed in an apron and underwear, and when Issei was close to the little blonde he hugged her and gave her a kiss that ended when he heard that Irina and Zenobia came down from the silver above, and when they went down they only found in Issei and Asia blushing. After the awkward silence they all sat down to have breakfast, and when they finished Issei remembered the envelope that Rias had brought him. After taking it and reading its contents, he was amazed by its content, as it mentions that a large number of renegade exorcists were approaching the city of Kuo, and that with them came the Bishop of Evil Valpur. Issei, seeing that name, crumpled the sheet of Rias's report, and seeing that the girls were worried about the brown-haired man, After the explanation of what the red-haired woman had collected, he passed the report to Zenobia, who saw it with Irina and Asia. They saw the amount of information and problems that were approached. After that they saw Issei, and he just said with a firm voice, "Issei, prepare yourselves." After breakfast, everyone went up to get ready while Issei sent him a message, and in the same way he went up to get ready. When he entered his room, he found Drake lying on his bed looking at his cell phone while laughing out loud. Drake, ha ha ha, those stupid humans believe they found a dragon, ha ha ha, what fools. Issei, you don't get tired of being on your cell phone all day. Drake, ha ha ha, no. And I also can't believe that during the time I was sealed, humans had created so many fun things like series, movies, manga and anime and more of those silly theories about supernatural beings, ha 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 ha, your disbelief has no limits, ha ha ha. After listening to Drake, Issei went to his closet and took out his exorcist clothes and his holsters from his back. While Issei looked for his clothes, Drake began to question them. Drake, what is your plan? Issei, go finish off Valper and come back. Drake, what a great plan, and don't you think someone else is behind this? Issei, why do you say that? Drake, I don't know Valper, the sacred swords, the city of Kuo, where two of the sisters of the demon kings rule. I have a feeling that someone else is behind this. Issei, you think Valper doesn't have the wit to plan all this? Drake, I don't see that old man planning all this, and also how he could get to Japan. Issei, it's okay, Drake, I understand what you're saying. I won't be too confident, don't worry. Drake, who cares about you? Issei with a mischievous smile. Issei, if I have any problems I will summon you. Drake, well, I'll answer your summons because I'll be very busy watching my series. At that moment the little red dragon stops talking and looks at his phone. Seeing that, the brown-haired boy just smiles, with his clothes in his hand, ready to change. When everyone was already prepared with their combat clothes, whether it was Issei with his exorcist clothes or Irina and Zenobia with their combat suits, leaving little Asia with her nun's habits, but after everyone was ready, no one left the house. Everyone was at the entrance. But the one who couldn't hold back the question was the orange-haired girl. Irina, what are we waiting for, Issei? Let's go. Maybe the bad guys will escape. Issei, calm down, there is still someone missing to be able to consume this revenge. And at that moment someone rang the doorbell of the house, and when Asia opened it, the one at the door was none other than another Kiba, the knight of Rias Gremory, with his school clothes and a sword on his waist. Issei, so you're going to leave? Kiba, since you told me so suddenly, I could only put this on to throw the president off the scent. Asia, Issei, why don't we say anything to Rias or President Sona? Issei, no, because if we tell them something they want to come in destroying everything, and this mission is one of caution. Zenobia, so what is he doing here? Zenobia said that while pointing at Kiba in a contemptuous manner. Issei, I think I haven't introduced you properly. Girls, this is my friend Kiba, one of the survivors of that cursed project. Hearing that, Zenobia changed in a second. Zenobia, so you're Issei's childhood friend, the one who escaped, right? Kiba, exactly, nice to meet you. Kiba reached out his hand to give it to the blue-haired girl. Zenobia, likewise Kiba, I'm Issei's girlfriend. It's nice to meet a friend of Issei. Hearing those words, the others were amazed by the presentation, and even more so by Irina, who was rubbing it in Zenobia's face that Issei was her boyfriend. After Zenobia's presentation ended, Irina quickly took Kiba's hand. Irina, nice to meet you, Kiba. I am Irina, the future mother of Issei's children, and I would like us to be great friends even though you are a demon and that is punishable, and for that reason I will pray for you every day so that you can save your soul. The moment Irina said that and put her hands together in a sign of prayer, Kiba had a headache, leaving everyone with a drop of sweat. Kiba, I'd be glad if you didn't do that. After the introductions, Issei created a transportation circle at everyone's feet, and in a moment everyone disappeared and appeared on the outskirts of Kuo City outside the boundaries of the demon barrier. When Issei arrived, he explained the plan to everyone. Issei, we will separate into 4 groups to surround the barrier that surrounds Kuo to see where the exorcists are entering and be able to attack them before they enter Kuo City. Zenobia and I will go separately while Irina and Asia will go together. Whoever finds something will communicate it through a magic circle. As everyone nodded at that moment, they all separated and ran in different directions around the barrier. After a moment, Zenobia found the renegade exorcists in a camp made near the barrier, and looking more closely at the camp, she could see a series of fallen angels who were among the priests, and seeing that they outnumbered her, she called a communication circle and warned the others of her location and the enemy camp. When the others arrived at a safe place near the camp, and when Zenobia said what she had seen, everyone became doubtful, and more Issei who knew of the secret alliance of the three factions. Issei, surely it's that damn Kokabil crow. Irina, who is Kokabil? Issei is someone who opposes peace between the three factions and is a caterer of Grigori. Zenobia, finally someone strong with whom I can test my strength. Kiba, if we are talking about one of the leaders of the fallen angels, he must be very strong. Issei, and it is for nothing that he is doing all this, and surely he plans to kill Rias and Sona so that the demons attack them and the agreement is broken. Zenobia, so what should we do, Issei? Issei, with a serious voice, we are going to attack. Only Asia will stay here in case someone gets hurt. Go back and Asia will heal them while the rest of us destroy everything. If you can capture them, do so. If you have no doubts, kill them. Exorcist camp. There were 2 renegade exorcists in a tent. Ronald, hey, just add, what did they say about tomorrow's attack? At what time will we enter the barrier with the help of Mr. Kokabil? Just add, at noon we will enter while the heiresses are at school, and then we will stay in an abandoned church. When suddenly a large sword fell on them and destroyed the area where they were killing them, while a blue-haired girl fell and took it by the handle to throw it to impale other exorcists. While others wanted to escape through the forest but were impaled by swords that had come out of the ground, while a boy came out of the forest with a flaming sword that activated his magic to incinerate them, but at that moment another attacked him and a fight had begun. On the other side of the camp, an orange-haired girl entered with a prayer of forgiveness when a father wanted to approach her to ask her what was wrong but could not exhale a word since her throat had been cut by a whip that retracted like a sword in the hand of that girl, and seeing that the other parents threw themselves at her to kill her, but the sword turned back into a whip so that when she swung it she would begin to tear them apart. Hearing so much commotion, the Archbishop of the evil Valper Galileo, accompanied by 4 fallen angels, but could only see how his priests were being massacred by strangers, when seeing that the 4 fallen angels went into battle, when in the sky they saw a red meteorite approaching at great speed, so much that it collided with one of the fallen angels that it would be said to the battlefield that when that meteorite collided with him it disintegrated. From the smoke a red armor came out, and when seeing that armor Valper, and seeing who it was, wanted to run away, but the armor turned on the thrusters and in a moment it reached the renegade, and with great force it hit his legs to break it, and paralyzed the Archbishop, and only a muffled cry was heard. Issei, where were you going, bastard? Valper, haha, damn brat. At that moment Valper began to vomit blood and fainted. 10 minutes had passed since the attack of the Issei group on the renegade exorcists, and he had only been able to catch 10 renegade fathers. 2 fallen angels and the Archbishop of evil Valper Galilei were all kneeling on the ground while Asia healed them one by one excepted Valper, who had been tied to a nearby tree, when suddenly he opened his eyes and could see the people who had attacked them was a nun with a dull face who was healing the prisoners. 2 girls who were flanking them, while in front of him was a blond boy who upon seeing him awake received him with a kick, one and another, until a voice was heard and from the darkness of the forest came out that boy in red armor. Issei, leave it, Kiba, we need answers from him. Issei took off his armor helmet and spoke. Issei, a fair to see you again, damn. Valper, remember, brat, that you must speak to me with respect. Hearing that, Issei just brought his hand closer to the head of the badly wounded priest so that when he touched him he received an electric shock. Issei, what were you saying? Valper, church dogs. When another kick from Kiba was given, at that moment Issei approaches and a red flame appears from his hand. Issei, do you know what this is? But he did not respond. Issei, this is a flame of the Red Emperor, a flame that burns like hell itself and never goes out. You will tell me everything I want, or we will have fun all night long. At that moment Issei brought that flame close to the Valper's face, and the screams of that unfortunate man were heard throughout the forest. Half an hour later Issei and company were leaving that forest. Irina, do you think it's wise to leave them alone in the forest? Zenobia, they are too weak to escape. Kiba, anyway, I already informed the president, and she is going to send a transfer group to clean the area and take the prisoners to the Gremory clan dungeons. Issei, what worries me most is what that damn old man said. Chapter 19, The Beginning of an End. A week had passed since Issei's group ambushed the renegade fathers and captured the evil Archbishop Valper Galilei. This had spread throughout the supernatural world. English, Coquebil's office and Grigori. Coquebil, how can it be that that bastard knew about my plan? Fred, calm down, boss. The good thing is that we still have the Excaliburs, and they don't know our plan with them. Coquebil, I hope so, and I hope that damn old man hasn't opened his mouth, because if not, we'll be in serious trouble. Fred, but boss, now that the old man is gone, how are we going to unite the Excaliburs? And moreover, we are missing too that you have those damn women of the church. Coquebil, how is the situation? Trying to take it from those brats will only bring us more problems, so we will do the process, but instead of a sacred ritual, we will do a ritual of angelic black magic using fallen angel magic, and with enough energy we will be able to perform the ritual. Fred, but if I remember correctly, for those rituals of a fallen angel, they need the sacrifice of human lives for a higher percentage of success, right? Coquebil, you're right, Fred, and I already know where we will get those people from. Kuo City, Issei's house. And Issei sitting in his living room thinking about what had happened. Issei's thoughts. The day after what had happened, Rias and Sona scolded us for attacking the exorcists behind their backs, and more to Kiba, who never said anything to his mistress, but everything was fixed because the danger had already passed. For now, since those words are still in my head. Valper, you will be able to stop me, but my master will come with more fury in his attack, and that peace that you long for between factions will be broken, and you will be able to see how those you love die, and you will not be able to do anything. But Issei was interrupted from his thoughts by Zenobia and Irina. Zenobia, what's wrong with you, Issei? I see you very thoughtful. Irina, are you worried about what that heretic Valper said? Issei, actually yes, I know that the one behind this is Coquebil, but there must be someone else behind Coquebil for him to have the confidence to do all this. But after saying the last thing, he realized that Zenobia and Irina were wearing Kuo's high school uniform. Issei, then the church, if I accept that, they will stay here with me in Japan. Zenobia, if someone appears, they will give the go-ahead that we will stay with you as backup if anyone tries to do anything else against the peace treaty between the factions. Irina, yes, and thank God I can spend more time with my darling and be able to procreate strong warriors to serve the Lord. Irina said this while kneeling and praying to heaven, while Issei and Zenobia watched her. Issei, I think it's fine, but I think that in order for him to be more confident with the current situation, I will have to schedule a meeting with Kuroka to see if she knows anything about the attack of the renegade parents. Zenobia with a strong face, who is that Kuroka? Issei. Issei, well, you'll see. A few minutes after an explanation. Zenobia, what do you mean you have another lover? Pouting face, and when were you going to tell me? Issei. Issei, well, there was no situation to tell you. Irina, how can you be such a womanizer, darling? Zenobia, tell me, Issei, apart from us and that Kuroka, how many more lovers do you have? Issei. Irina, Zenobia, do you already consider me? Zenobia, if I already consider you a lover of Issei, why sooner or later will Issei and you formalize your relationship? Irina, with tears in her eyes, hugs Zenobia. Irina, thank you, Zenobia, and you will see that we will get along well and that we will be able to carry this relationship with Asia, Issei, and you very well. Issei and Kuroka too. Saying that, the two girls turned to Issei with murderous eyes. Issei, well, no. Zenobia, no, Issei, it's time for the four of us to get together and get to know each other well and see how we'll carry out this relationship. And after those words from Zenobia, Issei could only nod. The week passed and Zenobia and Irina joined the school, saying that Zenobia was Issei's girlfriend while Asia and Irina were just childhood friends, so as not to raise suspicions of the relationship they had between them, since in the talk that Issei had with Irina their relationship could be formalized. The day had come for the meeting of all of Issei's couples, since Kuroka gave the day of the meeting and that had already arrived. It was night on the day of the meeting, and the girls were preparing to receive Kuroka with some tea and cookies in the living room, while a very nervous Issei was on an armchair thinking about the words he was going to say to all the girls around him when Kuroka arrived, when at that moment a purple magic circle was created in the center of the room. And from there came out a black-haired Nikomoto with a great body that left the three teenagers speechless, but they left their trance when the girl jumped into Issei's arms. Kuroka, Issei-kun, why haven't you talked to me before? Naya, Don't you see that I feel very lonely without you, Naya? Issei is that he had some problems at school and with some renegade parents. Kuroka, you should have said it before, Naya. Why can I be your teacher? He said that as he approached Issei's lips, when he felt a murderous aura behind him, and when he turned around he could see 3 angry girls. At that moment Issei stood up, leaving a Kuroka on the couch while he stood in the middle of the group of girls. Issei, we have to calm down, girls. Kuroka, seeing the girls closer, was able to know who they were. Kuroka, don't tell me, Issei, that they are your other lovers. Zenobia, what do you mean lovers? The only lover here is you, since I met Issei first and you. Kuroka, then you must be Zenobia, the younger sister of Griselda-san. Zenobia, how do you know Sister Griselda? Saying that, Zenobia takes out her Excalibur destruction back from a dimensional space. Seeing that, Irina and Asia went on the defensive, with Asia using a magic circle and Irina using the Excalibur mimic. Issei, calm down, girls. If you attack Kuroka, she will be able to defeat you easily since she is at the level of a high-class demon. Kuroka, no, kitten. In these last few months that we haven't seen each other, I've trained a lot, and you could tell that I'm at the level of a demon king speaking in magic. Hearing that, Zenobia begins to whisper a church song and a pocket dimension begins to open. Seeing that, Issei covers her mouth so that she stops singing that song. Issei, no, Zenobia, don't do that. Sister Griselda said that you will use it in case of an emergency. Causing the pocket dimension to close while Issei was trying to calm down a furious Zenobia, when out of nowhere a laugh began to be heard, and upon seeing the source of this laughter, it was a small red dragon on the stairs that was laughing and laughing at the situation that his partner was going through. Seeing that, Issei got angry. Issei, why don't you stop laughing and help me calm the situation, you damn lizard? Dragon, I don't think so, you're handling it very well, ha ha ha. At that moment Issei releases Zenobia and with a strong and firm voice tells everyone. Issei, everyone calms down and sits down to talk like civilized people. Hearing that, everyone put away their weapons and sat in the living room until Drake sat in the living room. Issei, before they start killing each other, Kuroka, could you tell me what you know about the Chaos Brigade and the plans they have with the traitor Kokabeel? At that moment Kuroka explained to him that the Chaos Brigade was preparing something very big, and that he confirmed that Kokabeel had joined the brigade and that he was supporting them in the shadows, and from what Kuroka understood, the brigade and Kokabeel were going to make their move on the same day. At that moment Issei began to think about what that important event would be for them to organize themselves so much until something came to his head. Issei, the peace treaty between the 3 factions. Asia, what treaty are you talking about, Issei-san? Issei explained to them that a peace summit between the 3 biblical factions was approaching and that perhaps this was the ideal moment for the Chaos Brigade to attack. Drake, this can also be a good thing since we can use it to give them an attack since he plans to come out of the shadows. Issei, you're right, Drake, we just have to plan it well since any mistake can cost us. At that moment Issei and Drake got up and left to plan the counterattack for the Chaos Brigade, leaving the girls alone in the room in great silence. Asia, Kuroka-san, so how did you meet Issei? That night Issei and Drake planned a great plan to end the Chaos Brigade while Kuroka got to know the girls better, establishing a nice friendship with all of them and more with Irina since the 2 wanted strong children from the brown-haired boy. The weeks passed and Issei and the girls had spent all this time training for the plan that they would carry out at the meeting of the fractions will not fail. The only drawback was that no one but them knew the plan, since if the others knew it the information leak would be greater, putting the plan at risk. It was the day before the peace summit in Kuo City, and the girls were arriving at the classroom and came in and noticed that several students were missing, including Issei Matsuda's and Motojama's friends. Seeing them enter, Aika approaches them. Aika, how strange to see Issei and his girls here. I thought he wouldn't come since the student council cancelled some classes. Zenobia, so that's the reason why there are so few students at school. Aika, if most of them didn't come for that, and those who came only came for their clubs. Issei's thoughts, it must be a strategy of the student council to be able to calmly prepare everything for the peace summit between the fractions. But it seems strange to me that my friends did not come since they belong to the photography club MMM. Then I will ask them. Asia, Aika-san, what will you do tomorrow since there will be no classes? Aika, I don't know, maybe I'll stay at home. Why do you ask, Asia? Asia, just out of curiosity. At that moment, a white-haired girl named Momo from the Sona clan enters the room. Momo, the president, requests the presence of Issei-san and his companions in the council room. At that moment, Issei, Asia, Zenobia and Irina say goodbye to Aika and head to the student council room with Momo. Upon arriving and entering, they found all the nobility of Rias and Sona waiting for them. Sona, since everyone is here and as you know, tomorrow will be the peace summit between the three factions at the academy, and the only ones who will be able to attend will be Rias and I as a representative of the demons and Issei on behalf of the angels. So the others will have to stay in the occult club waiting for the event to end and as a reserve for any mishap that may occur. After saying that and the others agreeing, they left to be ready for tomorrow, but before leaving, Asia separated from the group to go to the patio in front of the school to invoke different magic circles throughout the patio area and then leave. Random place in Kuo City. Aika was walking back to her house when suddenly she heard that someone was behind her and following her. At that moment she began to walk faster and faster until she could not stand the pressure any longer and turned around to face the person but could not see anyone, so she calmed down, and when she turned around to continue on her way, Fred appeared to hit her and knock her unconscious. It was the day of the peace summit of the three biblical factions at Kuo's school, and tension was felt throughout the city due to the large number of supernatural beings that were there that day. Issei was leaving his house to go to the meeting. Issei, girls, hurry up, we must not be late for such an important event. At that moment, Zenobia and Irina came out with their battle suits covered with their church robes and Asia in her nun outfit, but the latter was worried. Irina, what's wrong, Asia? I notice you're a little distracted. Asia, it's just that Aika doesn't answer my messages and that worries me. Zenobia, she is a very busy person, maybe I will answer you later. Asia, but what if something bad happened to her? What if she met a supernatural being and it did something horrible to her? Issei, knowing that the Chaos Brigade is in the city, I wouldn't rule it out, so that Asia is calmer. Go find Aika and have Irina accompany you while Zenobia and I go ahead to school. Asia, thanks, Issei. At that moment Asia gives Issei a hug and takes Irina by the hand to run in search of her friend while Issei and Zenobia go to school for the meeting. While Asia and Irina went to look for Aika at her house, they passed by the old ruined church of the city. Asia could feel an evil aura coming out of it that she could not ignore and changing direction. Asia with a confused Irina by the sudden change of destination, but when they arrived at the entrance of the church she could feel the aura that the blonde felt previously. Irina, what's going on here? Why do I feel such a dark aura? Asia with a serious face, it is a dark ritual of a fallen angel. Irina, are you sure, Asia? Asia, yes, and it is a high-level one. Irina, we must notify Issei soon. At that moment a girl's scream was heard inside the church. Asia, there's no time, we have to go in and see what's going on. I'll text him to let him know. At that moment Asia took out her cell phone to send the text message to Issei, and after that the two girls entered the abandoned church. In the Issei school, and Zenobia was receiving the Archangel Michael who had come for the peace treaty. Issei, Michael donated. How the trip was? Michael, very well, young Issei. How have you behaved in your instance with the sister of the Demon King? Issei, hee, I imagine that what happened in the last few months has reached you, right? Michael, well, they were just rumors. I would like you to explain it to me in detail and introduce me to your companion. At that moment Michael saw a very nervous Zenobia next to Issei. Issei, what manners of mine, Michael lent my boyfriend Zenobia IV a high-quality exorcist. Michael is Griselda Dano's sister who has one of the Excaliburs in her hands in Durandal, and I've heard a lot about you. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Extending his hand to Zenobia, who nervously returns the handshake. Zenobia, the pleasure is mine, Michael Dano. At that moment Issei's cell phone rang, but when everyone saw it he turned it off and put it in his pocket. Issei, it's better to turn it off, since the summit will soon begin, and we have to greet the other representatives of the factions. At that moment Issei accompanied Michael to the reception to greet everyone. Upon entering the room he could see how everyone was socializing, with a Xerxes talking to an Azazel and a Seraphal bothering a white-haired boy, and upon seeing Issei enter the room he runs towards him. Issei, this is going to be a very long day. Chapter 20 Ritual. Irina and Asia run inside the church. Upon entering, they looked for the origin of the screams when they saw that the sound came from the basement of the church where the ritual that was going to remove the secret gear had been performed. With extreme caution, they ran towards the entrance, and upon entering, they could only see a group of fallen angels surrounding some boys who were winged, and upon looking at them more closely, they saw that they were boys from school, and that among them were Ika and Issei's friends Matsuda and Motojama, when suddenly from the shadows one of Gregory Kokabile's caterers emerges, and behind him the renegade exorcist Fred. Kokabile, we are ready for the ritual. Generic fallen angel. Yes, my lord, we have all the human souls and the swords, but we do not have the magic power necessary to do it. Kokabile, don't worry about that, I brought something that will compensate for the power needed for that. At that moment, Kokabile takes out a black sphere from his sleeve, and when he drops it into the magic circle, a skull with black wings forms, and from it a great aura of power begins to emerge. Fred, what is that boss creature? Kokabile is the soul of one of my brothers who fell in the ancient war, and I locked his power in this object. The light of the magic circle began to join with the power of the sphere, and a powerful aura began to be created. Kokabile, start the ritual. At that moment, Kokabile went to sit on a throne that was in the room, while the fallen angels began to take the students and brought them closer to the circle, while others take out of the invocation circles the swords that Excalibur that had been stolen except for Zenobia and Irina. When placing the swords in the magic circle, these formed a circle. At that moment, a fallen angel took one of the students and pushed him into the circle, and when entering, his life force was absorbed by the swords until leaving a body that with a blow vanished into dust. At that moment, the angels began to take the students and put them in the magic circle to kill them. When seeing that, Asia and Irina were scared by what happened. Irina, Asia, you run outside and call Issei. I will try to stop them before they kill the others. Asia, there is no time. When I return with help, no one will be there and Ika could die. We must act now. At that moment, Asia came out of where they were hiding and creating 2 magic circles in her hands and began to bombard the fallen angels with fireballs. At that moment, Irina jumped with her sword to fight with the angels, cutting several of them until she could reach where the students were. When she arrived, she could only find Issei's friends and Ika alive. The others had already been thrown into the black magic circle. At that moment, from the darkness, a spear came out, stabbing Matsuda in the stomach. Seeing that, Irina reacted quickly to remove Ika and Motojama from the following spears of light that were approaching, and being able to dodge them, the black wings of one of Gregory's leaders. Kokabile, nosy brat, you guys are always meddling in my business. At that moment, he approaches Matsuda, who is wounded by the spear, grabs him by the head, and with a strong blow throws him in a circle, and when he comes into contact with him, he turns to ashes. Seeing this, Asia gets angry and creates several magic circles. Asia, die damned. Irina and the others threw themselves to the side after a bombardment of fire fell on Kokabile, creating a large amount of smoke from the fire blasts. After clearing, 12 black wings covered the angel. Kokabile, silly girl, you don't value your life. I'll take you in pieces so the Red Emperor can see you. Irina, run to the exit. Hearing that, Motojama took Ika, who was in shock, and ran to the basement exit. Kokabile, they won't go far. As if he were a lightning bolt, Kokabile flew out with a sword of light to where he was running, but a few meters away he was stopped by Irina with her sword, but Kokabile's strength was greater, so it was easy for him to throw it aside. But at that moment a rain of fire fell on him, since Asia had him in her sights from afar. Kokabile, they are insects. I will let my pets take care of you. He created several magic circles from which several demonic dogs emerged that attacked Asia and Irina at the same time, while he ran until he was in front of Motojama and Ika. When he was in front, he grabbed Ika by the neck to throw her into the magic circle, but when he was going to do it, Motojama pounced on Kokabile to hit him in the face, and when he saw such an action, he did not flinch and released Ika to grab Motojama by the shirt, and with his hand he pierced his chest and then dropped him to the floor in front of Ika. Motojama, strap. Kokabile, I hope the ritual works without one less person. He wanted to take the brown-haired girl to throw her, but was interrupted when Irina tried to cut the fallen angel with her sword, but he dodged it at the last moment. Looking around, he could see that his pets and fallen angels who had accompanied him had been defeated, and that Irina and Asia had many cuts with their clothes torn. He could only burn with rage. Kokabile, damn you little girls, I'm going to kill you. At that moment she began to create several spears of light to throw at them. Irina reacted quickly, grabbed a shocked Ika and ran towards where Asia was, who created a circle of protection to cover herself from the attack, but could not withstand the immense power, breaking, leaving the three girls on the ground. She approached them to grab Ika and take her by the arm. Kokobile, damn it, always getting into where it doesn't belong, but this time the Red Emperor isn't there to rescue them. At that moment Kokobile threw an unconscious Ika into the evil circle. At that moment Irina stood up and transformed her sword into a rope that she used to take her in the air, but at that moment the ritual began to get out of control and attract the brunette and an Irina who was holding her. At that moment Kokobile created a spear that he was going to use to pierce Irina, but when he was going to do it a large fireball collided with him and sent him crashing into the wall, and from the place of origin of the spell attired Asia with many blows. Asia, don't touch my family. A Kokobile coming out of the rubble very upset by that blow. Kokobile, this will not stay like this. Asia, it won't get any worse. At that moment, Asia's hand created a dark red invocation circle and from it came a small red dragon with a great aura that, not noticing this, the fallen angel began to laugh. Kokobile, ha 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 ha, he's going to do a push-up to me. Drake, you haven't changed at all, kid. Kokobile, hearing that voice, could only be on guard. Kokobile, the only time I could hear that voice was in the War of the Three Factions and it belonged to. He couldn't finish his sentence as the little dragon flapped his wings, making all the dust from the previous battles disappear to reveal a small drake. Drake, you are still your childish tantrums, you have not lost that personality since the wars. At that moment Kokobile thought quickly, seeing the little dragon and the circle of the ritual that was unstable at that moment began to create many spears of light to attack the dragon in front of him. Seeing that Drake created a circle around him and Asia that when receiving the impact did not have any damage, but they saw how Kokobile threw a spear at the evil circle that when touching it a large explosion occurred, destroying a large part of the church in the same way, sending Ika and Irina flying. After the explosion cleared, it could be seen that in the circle where the ritual was done a black sword with an evil aura could be seen. Seeing that, Kokobile flew quickly to her, took her and flew out of the ruined church. Seeing that, Drake charged a fireball towards the fleeing angel, but when he heard a scream, he stopped. Asia, Ika, wake up, let's go, wake up. At that moment Asia began to cry and Irina followed her. But everything changed when the little dragon approached and put the girl's hand on the ground. Drake, she's alive, but not for long. We have to take her to Issei so he can save her. For now, use your sacred gear. The blonde accepted and began to heal Ika. The little dragon turned into a large red dragon carrying the girls in its hands. But when looking in the direction of the academy, all you could see was that the buildings were on fire.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.